Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 20 of the Ark Podcast. This is probably going to be one of the last podcasts to close the end of the year, but we have a crazy amount of stories dropping on the internet right now. UK, USA, Ukraine, Russia, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Australia with the misinformation bill. We're here to update all of these things for you guys. Why the Libs can't do a Trump? What's going on with regards to that? We take a look at an article from John Roscombe from the IPA. The misinformation bill, it's in full retreat. Why is that? Where does it go from here? What's going to happen with that under 16-year-old bill as well to ban them from social media? We take a looks at Trump's latest appointments with regards to his administration and making America healthy again. The UK farmers have turned out in mass today, and we've seen Jeremy Clarkson come out and voice his concerns at essentially an inheritance tax. And Biden greenlights the use of long-range missiles in Ukraine, from Ukraine against Russia, nearing the world basically to World War III. To help us get through these particular topics today, I've got Damien Coory, host of The Other Side show, who has an esteemed background in marketing and radio. I've also got Paul Vallejo, former aerospace engineer and NASA expert with nuclear energy as well. On my left, I've got Shakeel Latimer, president of the Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce, and also a financial background and general badass with regards to economics. And I'm your host, Joel Jammal, looking forward to taking you through these topics. And it's been a very, very funny week. And I'm looking forward to delving into what especially Twitter is doing really well. But if you're listening on Rumble or if you're on another channel, go to Rumble. I will be reading out your questions. I will be going through exactly what questions you have for the audience and some of your comments. And if you flick us a few bucks, it helps keep the lights on. Thank you very much. But let's go to this first thing, which I think is close to all of our hearts, the misinformation bill. Where things are right now, the bill is basically dead in the water. The crossbenchers in the Senate, they were essentially the ones that Anthony Albanese were hoping to pass this bill. They've indicated that they won't be voting for the bill. This leaves Anthony Albanese in a very difficult position because he doesn't have enough votes to get this bill passed. Now, Malcolm Roberts from One Nation running for Queensland, he is someone that's going to take the fight to them even further. He has indicated on his Twitter just today that One Nation will force a vote to throw the misinformation bill and disinformation bill out of the parliament on Monday. Other senators will be asked to vote on this, including those crossbenchers as well. He's basically trying to take the fight to Labor and kill this once and for all. Albo, it seems as though he's sort of stepping back on this. He doesn't want to take the bill any further. He doesn't want to go to a vote because all the votes needed have basically indicated they won't vote for it. But that's not enough for Malcolm Roberts. He's taking it all the way. He wants to kill this thing for sure so that we don't have the jump on us before an election in March or May next year. Damien Coory, you've been covering this extensively every week on your show. What were your thoughts with regards to this whole situation?
Well, it's ridiculous, and it's another crazy waste of time and resources and stuff and attention going in a direction that we can't afford as a country, that we really need to be focused on actual issues that matter, but we're not because these crazy people are playing politics and nonsense with our nation, actually. Makes me really angry, Joel. I'm really sick of it. Like, I mean, how stupid... I mean, even just if these people in the Labor Party or in Albanese's government were completely self-interested creeps and they were just doing this for political reasons, it's terrible politics because nobody wants this thing. I mean, how stupid is Albanese that he's gone through the Voice thing. He's got egg on his face after the Voice because he got slapped down by the Australian public. Now he turns around and he's pushing another dog of a piece of legislation that nobody wants. It really, I don't know, it just makes me wonder what's really going on here. It's like these are obviously bad ideas, right? Being flogged to death by these people. Is there some other agenda? Is something else behind the scenes going on that we don't know about?
I mean, I think the name of the game is narrative control. When they lose with the Voice referendum, what they want to do is, well, how can we recover the narrative control that we've lost? And that's what authoritarians do: is they reach for the power lever, and the misinformation bill is an opportunity for them to control the narrative. despite the fact that one of the groups that lies the most, most of the misinformation in a lot of cases comes from the government. But if you get to control what's information and what's misinformation, then you have the ability to control the narrative and direct policy the way you want it to go, even if it is not in the interests of the Australian public, which it's not.
It certainly seemed like it was the scapegoat after the voice referendum. You know, Shakeel, you've remarked, you know, what is it about no, you don't understand? I thought you guys believe in
I love that line.
Yeah. I wish we get a megaphone and go out to the front of the Prime Minister's house and just start screaming no until he gets it, that the answer's no. Yeah. Now, they're trying. Melinda Scott just did an interview with Sky News and Paul Murray, and she goes, "Oh, it's really disappointing that they're not going to vote for it because of the millions and millions of people that get scammed on the internet." You know what? If that was your argument, you would have universal support. If the argument was that when you see, Twiggy Forrest, he's recommending some great investment, go put your money in, and you want that stuff taken down, fine. Debate that and that alone. But that's not what this bill is, and we can all see it for what it actually is. And where does
Who
it
was
end?
arguing that on
Linda Scott did it, and the Independent that was on Q&A on Monday. Linda Scott's the Labor something for Sydney Council, I think.
Right. And then the other woman was an independent.
Was an independent that was on Q&A the other day.
Oh, my God.
That's where they're trying to pivot this to.
Oh, my
But
God.
that's the thing. If you were trying to protect Australians from scams, that would be a different story. Then you would be talking about, okay, all these phone calls that people get. Can we do something to make sure the telecommunications companies require people to have licenses before they can mass call phone numbers? Those are the things that you could do if you were trying to deal with scams. We know that that's not what they're about, what they're after. And what they're after, somebody like myself, I trade the finance markets. What it means is that if somebody asks me, what do I think the future of Australian banking looks like? Do I think that the Australian banking sector is strong and is likely to have growth? What if I think that it's not? What if I think that there's some problems facing the industry? Now, those problems markets are cyclical. That might only be something that'll last for a year and then they recover. Who knows? But what it would effectively do, but if you actually read through that legislation, is it's not even about whether I'm saying something which is misinformation. It could be that I've released something that's gone viral where I have complained about the banking industry or any other industry for that matter. And then they say, well, that could destabilise the markets. So it's not even about misinformation. Where does it stop? And they talk about anti-bullying. If I come out here and say, oh, look, I'm the best-looking guy on this panel. Look at how gorgeous I am, right? And you guys say, no, you're not the best-looking.
It's misinformation.
Can I then say, well, that was bullying? You guys are bullying me, and so therefore I should have this taken down?
Well,
Where does it end?
authoritarianism is always rolled out under the guise of protection. Always.
Yeah.
That's the way it always works.
Yeah, we're here to keep. Well, look at 60 Minutes on the weekend. I mean, I didn't even watch the story, I got to admit, because I saw the promo and that was enough to make me want to throw up. But this whole idea that, okay, we're going to get this narrative of kids being bullied online, and that's tragic, and then you'll have the case of a kid that's tragically taken their own life, which is just unfathomable for parents to stomach. As one, it's the most horrible thing you could possibly imagine ever happening to you or your family. And then immediately the solution is to ban the internet. It's not the social media platforms that are the problem. It's not the media, the channels. It's the humans. If you want to fix these problems of bullying in our society, have a look at our culture. Have a look at the messages that we're sending kids today. Have a look at the loss of, religion or philosophy or a sense of depth in humanity and those sorts of issues. Go a bit deeper.
But not everything that could be considered bullying is necessarily bad.
No, that too.
Right? If somebody makes, I grew up in the 80s, semi-rural Western Australia, people will often, less so now because we're more multicultural than what we were back then, but people would often say to me, especially when I moved to the East Coast, that I've got a reasonably strong Australian accent. I still don't think I do, but other people say that I do. I don't look like somebody who would ordinarily have an accent like that. That's not bullying me. Right, so with my friends overseas and family members overseas that don't have an Australian accent, what are they going to do? They're going to make fun of me for having an Australian accent. My family that live in America, we make fun of them for having an American accent. Like, this is not bullying, but this is the oversensitivity that we're trying to teach our children to have. And parents, I don't think, want that.
And the opportunity for authoritarians
Absolutely.
to pass the laws that allow them the narrative control to get across their agenda, which is ultimately their goal.
Yeah.
They're constantly talking about children, and in the past it was children and terrorism.
Yeah.
Now, look at, was it the Patriot Act?
Exactly.
In the United States?
Exactly. That massive document they pulled off the shelf within weeks of the event. As if they didn't have that ready to come off the shelf at the nearest. Don't let any crisis go to waste.
That's right. And they never give up the power once they've got it. They never say, look, actually, maybe we should roll some of this back. Oh, no,
never.
Government.
Never.
Mate, that commenter from Monday's show, that's I love that man, meaning you. They're back today. So I am keeping an eye on the comments, guys. Sorry, Damien, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say now it's little old ladies being scammed. It's like, what's the narrative? What's going to work? We've tried everything. It's kids being bullied. It's okay. But I mean, as I said on my show, last week, it's like trying to ban. It's the equivalent of trying to ban television in 1960. I mean, it's insane. It's like the technology's there, right? We've got to teach kids how to use the technology responsibly, manage their behavior in that technology. You don't take the technology away from them. You don't take it away from us as adults and reduce our ability to express ourselves. So both of these laws are just an absolute abomination. And I can't believe we're even talking about it.
A Trojan horse for other things.
Totally a Trojan horse.
In both cases, it's not about what they say it's about.
The little old ladies being scammed. This is one of the ones that I love because, yes, we need to do something to protect them. There's no question that we need to do something to protect our vulnerable people from things. However, that doesn't mean that when I go out on a Friday night and I try and take $5,000 out of the bank because I want to go play the pokies and be an idiot on Friday night, that I need my bank teller to say, what are you planning on doing with the money? I'm going to gamble it. I'm going to throw it away and be an idiot on Friday night. Oh, well, are you sure that that's not... Go away. It's okay. I'm 40 years old, right? You're not my mother. Leave me alone. I'm okay. And what are we seeing now? We're seeing this move where they wanted to try to get rid of cash. It's more difficult to access cash from ATMs. I know I'm sort of slightly changing the topic, but it's this over-control and overreach of government and big corporations.
Government should be transparent and people should have privacy. Absolutely. What they're trying to do at every level is make sure that's the reverse. That they have complete view into everything the individual is doing and have secrecy at every level of government. It's a complete inversion of what they should be doing.
Did you see that study, Paul, that came out where they polled, I think it was Gen Zs, and they said, would you support having cameras inside your house that the government could access? And 30% of them said yes, right?
Insanity.
And most of them actually extended that to cameras inside their bedrooms.
Wow.
Like, to me, I thought that everybody was pretty pissed off when Edward Snowden started talking about how the American government had access to your dick pics. Now we've got a generation of people that are like, oh, actually, that's not so bad.
We've frightened them so much, they're crying for the authoritarianism. Without realizing what the actual cost is, what the actual agenda is. But, this is what we do when we traumatize a generation with the media that we have.
It's quite bizarre. Speaking of censorship, and this is a very strange reflex that they have. It's like when there's something you don't agree with, it's like a hammer in search of a nail. Just smash it, destroy it. Don't reason with it. Don't try and rebut it. Don't try and, have some kind of a Greek philosophical debate and pick it apart and, may the best idea win. It's like, no, it's intellectually lazy what they're doing. Now, one of the things we've covered on our show, and, obviously Damien Coory, you've interviewed Candace Owens when her visa situation, what was going on there. She's just hopped on this morning on Kiss FM with Kyle and Jackie O, and this is what she had to say about what's going on. And Kyle goes as far as saying, "Look, Australia's become a nanny state. Check this out."
Letting everyone know different points of view, different opinions, different takes on the world, and what rules we go through and what we have to live through. That is what society is all about.
When last we spoke to you, you were coming here for a speaker tour.
Yeah, the immigration minister got in the way.
The Anti-Defamation Commission, who pushed for Owens to be barred in Australia, said the decision was, quote, a victory for truth, for decency.
Like, I found out basically at the same time the press did because he was just so proud of himself.
Over time, she seems to have become increasingly disconnected from reality.
It is picking and choosing who they want in here and that is not the way this country is supposed to operate.
I want to shout out the Australians because they are not taking me being banned sitting down. They have started a petition.
The minister feared your speech may incite discord.
I've spoken in the UK, Israel, Hungary, Japan. I mean, I've been all over the place, and I've never sown discord.
It just makes me so happy to know that people are fighting for free speech. They're outraged.
Australia has done a social media ban for all children under 16 years of age. It will come into place next year.
That would never fly in America. It's like you have to allow people to parent their own children.
A national vaping ban. $1.5 million fine for a convenience store is what they want to give them if they sell vapes to anyone.
Kind of one of the reasons like why Trump won. I think if they had the authority to just monitor every aspect of your life, people are tired of it.
So the government doesn't want free speech and free thought listened to. The rules are starting to get a little bit much.
Look, thank you, Carl and Jackie. Guys, what were your thoughts on that? Because all three of you, you're very in fact, everyone here, except me probably, you're very internationally minded people. You've done a lot of travel outside of Australia. What the hell? What is this? This isn't the norm, and I think a lot of Aussies think it is the norm. This nanny state thing. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. It's sort of this, what do you call it? It's the Stockholm syndrome. And because everyone's here, because everyone's sort of grown up here and they're used to sort of the way the nanny state operates and that we police everything. I think, I'm reminded of that quote from Thomas Sowell. He says, if a society, if every time you see something wrong, you say there ought to be a law against that, you hold freedom in very low regard. And
well, that's my joke about the ABC, right? Just listen to any ABC news bulletin and you can say after every story, and the government should fix it.
Yeah.
The whole thing implies, and that's the cultural problem with the ABC. It's not an outward bias. It's this embedded cultural bias that sort of runs through absolutely everything that they report and say and do on their networks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, it's an international embarrassment, I think. I mean, I lived as an expat in Hong Kong for 16 years and other parts of Asia for a few years and came back in 2020, felt like Rip Van Winkle, what the hell happened to my country, and that's sort of why I started the other side. But I think the idea that you're pointing to is right. People, I guess Australians love government, and that's the perception of Australians overseas, is that we are this big nanny state loving country. We love rules, we love authoritarians, and we like being ruled. How can that happen? It can only happen in a country where there's never been a truly despotic, dystopian, totalitarian government. Only people who have never seen or know what it's like to live under tyranny or to live under even just government oppression could think, as Australians do, that government's always such a great thing and that more government is only going to help, right? So we don't have that American thing of, I'm from Washington, I'm here to help, no, get the hell out of here. I want my state, to have its authority, and the Civil War history of America that sort of established that idea. We don't have, the Eastern European thing of we were under Soviet rule and we hate that. And we so you get immigrants here who just go, what is this country? It's like free, it's rich. It takes a lot to screw this up. And they're doing a fantastic job of it. And it isn't just the Labor Party and the unions, although it is a lot of them, and it's the Greens and the left. But, our so-called centre-right party is also just a gutless train wreck of big state-loving, whibs.
And I think, I don't want to hear from you in a sec, Shakeel, but just to paint a picture here, yeah, the Liberals, they are a problem. When the misinformation bill was sort of being pushed, especially after the Bishop Murray was stabbed back in April, Susan Ley, Peter Dutton, the party policy was basically, we support a misinformation bill. Susan Ley even went as far as to say, we will provide Labor the votes to pass a misinformation bill to combat this kind of thing with Elon Musk trying, not complying and keeping this video of this bishop being up. Peter Dutton didn't oppose that until after the bishop came out and said, no, I'm happy for the video to stay up. Okay, so that's your stance on the misinformation bill. What about the ban on under 16-year-olds with regards to what's going on there? And they support it. They're like, yep, no worries. We will bipartisan. We should pass it by the end of the year. David Coleman, he's the communications minister for the Liberals. Shadow communications minister for the Liberals. He's like, yep, absolutely. We will provide Labor the votes. We want to pass it before the end of the year and implement it as soon as possible. This is a critical emergency.
He went on Sky News and he sold the thing like he was the Minister for Communications. I mean, you could be forgiven for not calling him the Shadow Minister because he virtually got up there and was, I said last week, it's like with enemies like the Liberal Party, who needs friends?
Yeah.
Well, the Liberal Party may as well just close up ranks and say, look, we're just going to join the Labor Party. They're already described as two asses of the same arsehole.
Well, I actually think, I think they've been taken over and infiltrated by a left-wing element
what I think
faction
it is
that's taken the whole party over, and Conservatives can't even get in the door now.
I think it's the cowardice of Conservatives that they don't want to stand up and rock the boat, so they try to be all polite. I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is people like myself, actually. I'll blame me. It's my fault. Because when I was younger, it used to really annoy me when I would see even one of my favourite Prime Ministers, John Howard, for the flaws that he had. I actually think he did a really good job overall in running this country. But you would look at how they would deal with things, and anytime they got any pushback, they'd try to step back a bit, and they'd try to be conservative or be a bit more liberal in their viewpoints. And the liberal part of the Liberal Party, and voters like me would say to them, you're not the Conservatives, you're the Liberal Party. Now I'm sitting there saying, actually, can you move a bit further to the right? Because you've come back too much to the centre and you're being too accommodating to ideas that we do not support.
The word conservative means conserve your values, right? And it's in the name. It's in the name, the Liberal Party. Who, what is those liberal values should be conserved, because that's what makes you previously a valuable party. Now, unfortunately, a lot of parties are full of, I call it the 5 C's: the cowards, the careerists, the corrupt, and some courageous. Oh, and the clueless, right?
I can think of a few other C words.
Okay. There are courageous people in the Liberal Party, but they are not the people pushing forward the agenda. There are so many people who are willing either to sell out their values or they're clueless. And Australia is heading right towards the iceberg. With the net zero agenda is a disaster. It's a disaster for businesses. It's a disaster for families. It's a disaster for our national security. And we do not have a major party, who is trying to be a bulwark against this. And the classical liberal, Enlightenment values, this is what made Western civilization great. Yeah. And we are not embracing and conserving those values. And not even the Liberal Party. Your name is right there, liberal. What are you doing?
Can I just say something? Because I'll just come back a little bit on something that you said there. I don't actually think that Australians in general love government. I don't think they do. I think there's a lot of apathy. I think that's the real problem. I mean, we're a country, not my ethnicity, but we're a country founded, on petty criminals that were forced over here. We're a country of rebellious people, and we can go through the Eureka Stockade, which is not taught at school, and all the different things that have happened throughout Australian history. If you have a look at the Labor Party, I don't know why they think they have a mandate. What do they get? 30% of the vote? Okay. You have a look at the UK, the Labor Party over there. Actually, if you have a look at how people voted, although, yes, the Labor Party won in the UK, if you have a look at how they voted, I could make a pretty strong argument that the country actually moved to the right. It's just because of the quirks of their electoral system that produced the Labor Party victory. Mm-hmm. So it's not as though the majority of people are actually supporting these kinds of ideas. And as you've pointed out, Joel, quite a few times, when people are asked directly with things like The Voice, they oppose it.
Yep.
If you go back in, ancient history now, when Senator Conroy wanted to bring out the metadata retention laws, when people were polled, the overwhelming majority of Australians didn't want that. They passed it anyway because they had the numbers. So I don't actually think that the everyday Australian does want more government. And what's been really surprising, especially since I've been on your podcast, is I've had friends of mine who I've never really talked politics with because they're, in my mind, very on the left. One of them actually lives in inner city Melbourne. And sending me messages saying, hey, another one that lives in Perth, saying, hey, can you get one of the Make Australia Great Again hats? And I'm like, huh? You're a lefty. Yeah. Like, yeah, but we don't agree with government either. And that's what we've seen, is that the people that are on the left, when you actually sit down and talk with them, outside of perhaps some of the diehard Green supporters and the diehard Labor supporters, they'll actually sit there and say, look, we want clean energy. We don't want, a failing electricity grid.
Yep.
We want healthcare to be funded. We're not saying that we want government to dictate everything that we eat and drink and etc. So if you actually look, I think the left and the right are a lot more similar, and that's where you get that crossover between the Bernie bros who moved across to Donald Trump.
Definitely.
So the US, I think, is and what we're seeing in the US is actually an indicator, in my eyes, as to the general feeling of the populace in the Western countries. The Five Eyes countries are the most alike. But even if you have a look through Europe, look at how the German media is losing their mind over a political party that's on the right. They're not extremists. Look at what happened in France, the gaming of the political system in the last elections in France. You're seeing Sweden Is Sweden a right-wing country? What are they upset about in Sweden? They're upset about immigration.
Yep.
They're upset about overreach a little bit of government, not their own, but the European Union government. So we're seeing that around the world. I actually don't think that people will like this. I think they're just forced to put up with it.
I don't agree. I don't agree with the idea that people don't want government. I think what you're saying, that people, if you say to people, do you want rules and regulations and people telling you what to do, then there's a libertarian element and people will just go, yeah, I want to be free, like bugger off, especially that Aussie rebellious thing you're talking about, Shakeel. But I think when you say, oh, by the way, we'll be taking the money away, then people freak out. Australians love the parent government. They love the nanny state and they love the welfare state. So we've grown addicted to the teat of government. We want the bucks. We want the handouts. We want the money redistributed. Now, not all of us. I mean, I think there's a very strong, growing sort of conservative and classical liberal libertarian base of Australians who are saying, no, enough. We've got to learn to stand on our own 2 feet and grow up. But if you had to say to me what is the single biggest difference between the Australia I left in 2001 and the Australia I came back to in 2020, I would say it's the people, the attitude of I can do it. I want to be my own man. I want to man up and do it myself. I have my own family. I'm not taking handouts from the government. That was a very, very big mental thing in the mid to late 20th century. Being on the dole was an embarrassment, right? You didn't talk about it. You didn't go on the dole unless you were desperate, right? Now we've got great things like the NDIS being abused by, anybody can get their hands on it. We've got people just want to take from the welfare pie. And I think we've developed a really bad welfare state mentality and we've become dependent on it. And I think people want to be parented because the opposite of having government as a parent and being a nanny state is you have to grow up and you have to take responsibility for your own life. And you have to say, if my life sucks, it's because of me. And I think most people don't want to do that. They want to say, my life sucks, it's because of the government. I should get that.
Let's assume that's
I have
right,
more faith in Australians than you, obviously.
Not most. Okay, let me say not most, but I think a disturbing percentage, like probably a really big third of the country, is just sitting there sucking on the teat of the productive third.
We have lost.
And I think the productive third have had enough and they're going, I'm getting out of here.
We have lost self-reliance as a value.
Can we change it? Because in America, we've seen a situation where there's been a big cultural revolution, a libertarian revolution, a Ron Paul sort of revolution. Trump was less inclined to be fiscally responsible in 2016 and 2020 when he went to the electorate and touch, something like Obamacare. But now he's setting up like the Department of Government Efficiency. He's putting Elon Musk and Vivek, in charge, and they're clearly like, yep, we're going to rip out the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy. Do you think it's possible that when things get bad enough, the Aussie people could actually be like, hang on a sec. What do you mean you're spending this amount on a new statue here? It's going to cost 20 mil to put an Aboriginal flag on the harbour bridge. It's going to cost this amount for, we've got this much efficiency.
It cost $20 million to put that flag up there.
It was going to, but then they didn't do that. They decided to rip down the New South Wales flag and replace it with the Aboriginal flag that no one voted for.
But how could it cost $20 million to put a flag up there?
Don't get me started. It was either
government, mate. We can do anything to make it cost $20 million.
I've changed my mind. I've now become a lefty. I'm going to set up a company and I'm going to contract the Australian government. I've been doing it wrong all these years.
Yeah.
That is actually the problem. And I've had a lot of very interesting conversations with business people and friends of mine across Australia and across the world. And one of the things they've said to me is, one of their kids said to me one day, he goes, the problem with you is that you overvalue freedom. And I was like, what do you mean I overvalue freedom? Like, just give it up a bit. I'm like, for what reason? He said, all you got to do is get your political contacts, lobby government a bit. You'd make so much more money.
Yeah.
It would be so much easier.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to the heart of what you're saying.
Sorry,
that's only the people at the top. The everyday person is sick and tired of it.
Sorry, misinformation. It wasn't 20 mil, it was 25 mil.
Wow.
I'll make the flag for him. It's like Biden's...
I'll climb up and put it there myself.
Biden's, what was it, $1 billion that he spent to build 8 charging stations?
Oh, I see. I thought you were talking about the $1 billion that Kamala blew on her campaign.
Well, that's...
all the celebrity endorsements.
I could have done it I could have got her not elected for $900
yeah,
million.
exactly. A lot. And the problem with a lot of government initiatives is you can fail much more cheaply than we are currently failing.
What about their version of NBN? in America.
NBN? Yeah. I don't know. Oh, you mean...
So billions of dollars on
Yeah.
like fiber or something.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a huge problem with the government inefficiency. Absolutely, there's the show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome, and there is a problem also with self-reliance, and a lot of our self-reliance has deteriorated partly because we haven't seen hard times in a lot of cases. We also haven't seen bankruptcy or inflation, but there's also a sort of a level above in which case in which it's the pharmaceutical and the military-industrial complex overlay on a lot of these things, like the Ukraine war, the what just happened with Make America Healthy Again. These are huge costs. The military and pharmaceutical industrial complex are giant. When you talk about sucking at the teat, they're in this case parasites. Just sucking away our prosperity, and they don't have to, but because the party elites in each party live off of that, and they are not serving their underlying constituents. The Greens voter is not going to see a better environment when they have windmills offshore. The Labor voter is not going to see a lower cost of living for working families, and the Liberal voter is not going to see functioning business and a free society. Not with the people in charge running the show, because they're run by the pharmaceutical and military industrial complex and whatever other globalist institutions are pulling their strings.
I want to come back on big business, because this is one of the biggest issues. And in my role as the president of the Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce and Business Council, one of the things that we would do a lot is talk about the fact that you've got small business. I'm talking tiny businesses, right? We've got 800,000 members across the Pacific Rim, but a lot of them come from pretty small countries. You're talking a mum and dad business with a couple of employees from a relatively impoverished country. How do they get access to a big market like the US or Canada, which technically both of those are in the Pacific? How do you get access to those markets? How do you compete? The thing is that I look at some of the biggest corporations out there, and I think, wow, there's got to be a way. Like we're talking a lot about the duopoly of Woolworths and Coles. There's got to be ways to be able to bring more efficiency with small businesses, being able to do things more cheaply, even though those big companies have an economy of scale. I've come to the conclusion, because I've got my tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theorist that I am now, I actually believe that big business doesn't want to be and is designed not to be efficient. Because if you have a look at the way they're structured, one, they are the recipient of massive government subsidies, as you were sort of referring to before. Two, they're often run by people that are formally in government or connected to government through unions and superannuation funds, etc. And three, they don't want to be too efficient, because that way there can't be an argument that they're making government look bad. So what they do is they squeeze the lifeblood out of small businesses and small operators. Yep. And that's why we see this massive consolidation.
I have another idea about that. One of the things that's become clear to me is that Disney is no longer a for-profit company. And why is that? Why does Disney not care that they keep on burning billions and billions of dollars destroying franchises with a political agenda instead of storytelling? And one of the ways that they can get away with that, and the board doesn't sack them, is that the board, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's correct, that the largest shareholder in a lot of cases is Vanguard and BlackRock. Right? And because they run the mutual funds, they get the voting rights from all the people that basically buy their mutual funds. They're the ones that get the voting rights, and they don't care that Disney is losing money. They're trying to push some other agenda, and it is not about profits for business by actually making a good product. That might be a cancer.
Well, what's the agenda?
Oh, in the case of Disney?
No, in the case of Vanguard.
Oh, well, I think the head of BlackRock is one of the people on the World Economic Forum, is he not? One of the agenda contributors? Do I have that wrong, Larry Fink?
Oh, I'm so limited to what I'm allowed to say here, but can I...
Yeah, me too.
Sorry, you go first. And then I'll say
I think what I would say is this. There is a nexus going on between government and corporations, right? So big business and big government work in cahoots. So you
there's a name for that. What is it?
Yeah. And basically, it's exactly that. I mean, what they want, what big corporations want, is monopoly or control, right? They don't want entrepreneurial spirit. They don't, the things that have sort of made that have made Australia and America and free markets economics great. The fact that anyone can go out and start a business. They don't want that. They want to control the industries that they're in, right? And they do that by lobbying government to introduce regulations. The regulations come in, the small businesses can't keep up with the red tape and the regulatory tape and the green tape and the rainbow tape and all the other stuff all these paperwork they got to fill in, right? And you end up with a situation where all the small businesses go out of business and only the big businesses can survive because they're the only ones who can afford a compliance and legal department that's big enough to manage all of that bureaucracy.
That's a very good point.
And that nexus that's an evil nexus between big government and big business is what we, the people, have got to crack. And it's why they hate the populist movement, because the populist movement is the little people pushing back, going, we've had enough of this crap from big business and from big government, and we don't want it anymore. And that's the problem.
Very well said.
Yeah.
That's
and I don't think, the asset management firms, they channel the funds or whatever they're doing, they're playing their own games. But I think that conspiracy theory about asset management firms ruling the world or being that, they own things on behalf of their clients, which are other corporations. So it's just a big mush of government bodies and corporations.
What you're saying applies to the banking industry, absolutely. Because once you make the banking compliance much more expensive, only the big players can play. But I think what you said was absolutely beautiful and absolutely correct. But it doesn't explain Disney. Right? Because nothing about what Disney is doing anything other than burning shareholder capital to promote a political agenda, which is in all their films. You can look at channels like...
but it does support their business because it maintains their control. So they see themselves as they want to be the number one dominant media player, right? They own ABC, ESPN,
they're
God knows what else
losing
they're at, right?
billions on every front.
Okay, but they still want to be... They want to be... If I could just explain, there was this theory, well, it's not a theory, but there was a thing that happened that really changed everything in America, and it was that Occupy Wall Street movement, right? So I was working for a major US public relations firm at that time, and the whole thing just shifted. It went from, we're now going to go in there and we're going to tell corporations to be the good guys, right? Because the left are coming after the corporations, and we can't have that after the global financial crisis and blah, blah. So we've got to go in there and so we're going to buy into every bit of woke garbage we can possibly buy into. And that's when it all began, the greening and the LGBTing and rainbowing and everything of every bloody corporation. All trying to make themselves look good to calm the left down, right? So it's Wall Street saying, settle down. Yeah. And so everybody got in on the act. And the big consulting firms and the PR consultancies, like the one I was working for, but other big the big four, the accounting consulting firms, all those big firms are like, woohoo, fees. We'll go in and charge for a new plan to change your, approach to hiring.
And sensitivity training.
Oh, we got all sorts of training.
Green star rating in property. How efficient is your commercial building? The Aboriginal sensitivity training and welcome.
Mate, my area was crisis communications, right?
Yeah.
We had training. I had a big business in crisis communications training for the firm that I worked for, that I looked after for Asia Pacific, right? We would go into companies after 2001 and 9/11. We'd go in and help them with their crisis risks. They'd be like, oh, that couldn't happen to us. And we're like, well, who thought the two planes were going to go to the World Trade Center? So anything can happen. You've got to be ready. And we sold that on that basis. And a lot of companies were doing good crisis prep work and good training. Bang. Global financial crisis. It just disappeared. Where did the money go? Legal and compliance. It all became about complying with these new regulations about woke crap, right? So basically, the money got sucked out of the PR firms and got sent over to the law firms, right? They worked out a way to get some money for themselves. And so they had this. So now compliance law is one of the biggest aspects of law as a profession. It's massive. It's a whole new industry.
Which is precisely the reason why you're never going to see a reduction in these laws. Sorry, did I cut you off?
Yeah, no, not at all, mate. I've been ranting too long.
I just want to... That's right. Wait till I start. Look, I don't want to jump to the defence of Vanguard and BlackRock, both of whom I do business with, and I know some of the tops of these organisations, and you're going to force me to upset our audience and defend the World Economic Forum. So I'll do my best.
Oh, look, mate, I'll defend Vanguard and BlackRock because I've got clients. I've worked for them as well, but I will never defend the World Economic Forum. Well, you're going too far there.
Give me,
I'll burn them all down.
Give me a moment here, all right, and then I'll just show myself out of the studio. No. So, look, with Vanguard, yes, they are an asset management company, I believe, it's been a while since I've looked at it, I believe they will actually allow you to proxy vote, so you don't have to let them vote on your behalf. BlackRock's a little bit different because a lot of the assets that BlackRock is managing, for example, my understanding is that they manage a lot of the government employee pension retirement money for places like California, right? So then there's an insidious relationship between what makes sense politically in California as opposed to what would actually make sense for the people whose money it really is or on whose behalf it's being invested. And I think that without defending the management of BlackRock, I think that puts them in a difficult position because they have to play the political game as well as the investment game. And what we've started to see in the hedge fund and collective investment scheme or managed investment type arrangements is a lot of these companies saying, oh, we better, in order to attract capital, we better make sure that we comply with ESG rules and etc. Now, to the World Economic Forum, I actually got invited to the World Economic Forum, and I was quite surprised because I'm not powerful enough or influential enough or big enough a business person.
You're being groomed.
Well, that may well be the case, but I'm basically
to our forum.
Some dickhead from Western Australia that happened to get good at trading interest rate derivatives and made really good money. Why am I good at that? I don't know. I was a good broker before. I was a good trader, but interest rate derivatives are the most boring. That's why I'm single, because it's the most boring thing you could ever imagine. But I'm good at it. So I was managing a fair bit of money, and I went to a particular country. I was dealing with their government, and a friend of mine, said to me, hey, you should come to the World Economic Forum. I'm not going to the World Economic Forum. They're like, oh, they'd love you. I'm like, no, they won't, because you know some of the publicly terrible things I said about the World Economic Forum and their leaders? They're like, yeah, that's why they'd love you. I'm like, dude, I'm not going. Also, it'd be a hit to my credibility.
It's an opportunity to buy you. They have to see what your price is.
Maybe,
they have to get you inside their organization.
Are we back?
See if they can either do a honeypot trap or see what your price is. That's your opportunity.
Are we back here in next year saying, oh, World Economic Forum was awesome? But I will say this. Sometimes I think some of these organisations have ended up just on the wrong side of everything. So if you have a look at what the World Economic Forum says that they're about, not what they do, but what they say that they're about. They say that they're trying to make sure that corporations are being more responsible and that they're in more harmony with the needs of people, which is represented by government.
Of course, that's what they would say.
So that's what they say, right? So when you then go to any of these international events, and I've been to a number of international events, not World Economic Forum stuff, but other international events, what happens? You sit down with a whole heap of people, you're at a table, you're talking, and they're like, oh, okay, well, what are you going to do? Oh, we should develop a mine in, the middle of nowhere. Okay, cool. And you know what? We'll employ X amount of women and we'll put a few gay people in there. And you'd be sitting there, you're a polite company, you're having your caviar and champagne, and you just go, yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, cool. Because at the end of the day, when you're sitting at the top and you're looking at, okay, this is going to be a $1 billion investment, and I'm going to funnel 5 million or 10 million or 50 million or whatever into this, and so is everybody else in the room, you don't really care too much about the extra few percent that you might lose in efficiency. What you care about is that you're going to be invited to another one of these international forums with like-minded investors. And so that's what ends up happening, is that they just do these things. So one of the things that the World Economic Forum gets criticised a lot for is that thing that came out that said, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. But that wasn't an official position of the World Economic Forum. That was the position of a group that was presenting something at the World Economic Forum.
No, but the Great Reset was.
Yeah, and
Great Reset was the worst branding and public relations exercise in the history of anything ever.
Yeah.
So as I said,
has a bust of Lenin behind him, and he talks about the Great Reset and how they penetrate the cabinets.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole agenda. It's one of the.
I just want to be very clear though before you go on. I just want to be very clear. I'm not actually jumping to the defence of the World Economic Forum, but what I am saying is that we should actually have, and this is where small businesses like the Chamber of Commerce that I've been involved in, like other groups, this is where we should actually have a similarly equal sized organisation that brings people on, that brings businesses and investors on, that says, hey, we're going to, for example, we're not happy with banking in Australia, we're going to either create a bank or we're going to create some sort of financing regime so that people can access the sort of banking they want. We're not happy with the duopoly. We're going to force competition into the market by bringing like-minded people. So, again, not a defence of the World Economic Forum or other organisations like them,
but something like that.
But it's our failure to do something. It's the Liberal Party's failure to do something which causes this weakness.
100%.
I say the same thing about China. Again, not going to defend China. The Belt and Road Initiative is a fantastic initiative. If I was Chinese, I would be really, really happy. I can't criticise China for that because they're acting in their best interest. Why aren't the Five Eyes nations saying, well, you know what, we'll build one as well and we'll increase our trade?
That's a great point. I mean, if America was like, we want to invest in Australia, here's $500 million, we want to invest in your tech sector or whatever, none of that. There's none of that.
I can't fault China for basically creating a situation where they're exporting unreliable power to us and importing at cheap cost our reliable energy to them. If I was China, that's what I would encourage. And then, how do I actually convince Australia to do something so stupid as to import unreliable power and then give them our reliable power at a cheaper cost? I know, net zero. Green New Deal, inviting politicians who are easily swayed, with a Jedi mind trick or a little bit of cash. How would you do that? Well, one way or the other, we know it's being done to us. The question of how, well, that might be up for debate. But I can't blame China for it. But I can blame our elite politicians and our political parties for buying it.
Well, Damien, I'd like you to weigh in on this as somebody who's been involved in media. So Donald Trump criticised, he's terrible, he's a horrible person, orange man bad, and hates the planet, hates the environment because he was going to pull out of the Paris Agreement. And I used to say to people at the time, I was like, yeah, it sounds awful because the Paris Agreement has such amazing things in it that you really support. Can you name anything? What? Well, have you read the agreement? No. I said, why don't you go on the internet, go on Google, and just see if you can find what the agreement that the US agreed to actually says. Because before you actually criticise Donald Trump for wanting to pull out of it, you should know what it says. I'll tell you what, you'll struggle. If you try looking it up now...
The Paris Agreement?
I don't think you'll find what the Paris Agreement, the US side of that Paris Agreement actually committed the US to do. I don't think you'll find that in the first few searches. You'll have to really, really go through it to try to find what the agreement says. Where was the media to actually say, hey, we're critical of it, we care about the environment, let's see what it actually says? There was no sort of investigative reports. It's not the sort of journalism the Boston Globe did 30 years ago. There's not that kind of journalism anymore. It's gone. There's not the sort of investigative reports that you used to see on 60 Minutes, 20 and 30 years ago. You don't see any of that anymore. So, as I said, I think that if people are incensed about government and big corporations, it's one thing to just sit there and whinge about the World Economic Forum and other international organisations, but we should be out there setting up our own and saying, right, we are going to take our country back and we're going to bring like-minded people to the table.
About the Paris Agreement obligations.
You have to look it up under suicide pacts. It's in there.
I got it under Grok. Grok's pretty good.
I think suicide pact, isn't that the European Union agreement?
All of them. The Kyoto Accords, the Paris Accords, the European Union agreement are signing up to net zero.
Here's my question for you.
Free with red Kool-Aid.
Kyoto didn't work. That didn't solve the problem. The Paris Agreement doesn't solve the problem. Glasgow doesn't solve the problem. How many times would we need to have a big international climate change agreement before the problem's actually solved?
There's no problem to solve.
Exactly.
The problem is the pact.
Yeah.
It's a big shill just to concentrate more money and power into the government. It's an emergency. It's a climate emergency.
Right.
Nobody is more to blame for the rise of the left in Australia than the Liberal Party of Australia, period. Right?
Really?
The failure of them to produce any kind of viable opposition, statements, education, anything, and to run away from anybody who's attempting to do that and not support people on the centre-right who are actually trying to do that is the number one problem I think that this country is facing. we have a crisis of politics because we don't have two sides to our political environment. And people say to me, oh, they lament the polarization of American politics. Well, I'd rather have two polarized sides than have the uniparty nonsense that we've got going on in Australia right now, because it's killing us.
Yeah, that's
it is
the
killing us slowly.
The U.S. and Australia is that in the U.S., the uniparty duopoly has been broken. You had all the neoconservatives jump ship and join Kamala Harris. You had Miss Piggy, Liz Cheney go over to the Democrat Party. A lot of the neoconservatives, all the deep state actors, the ex-CIA chiefs, the generals, go over to the Democrat Party, and you actually truly have a populist option for once in the U.S. And people chose it. They saw past $1 billion of propaganda, all the celebrities, all the mainstream media, all piled on one side, and they said no.
And traditionally, left populists, people like Bernie Sanders,
has come, or some of them came over to the Republican side.
He himself he's an independent anyway, right? There was no room for him in the Democrats. Yeah. He should join Trump.
Well, a lot of his supporters have.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at people like Tim Pool and a number of the other people who liked Bernie Sanders, they have jumped ship.
But he's a raving lunatic neo-Marxist, so no thanks. But I mean, he's a far left nut job.
No, he is a lunatic.
Here's I'm going to defend the things I don't believe in, right? If you look at Bernie Sanders and even Elizabeth Warren, I can't even believe I'm doing this. Am I doing this in front of an audience?
They're doing this.
If you have a look at some of their complaints about private equity, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are legitimate complaints.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Those concerns are not going to be addressed by the Democrats.
No.
They're more likely to be addressed by the Republicans.
Correct.
What I'm suggesting
I get it.
is not that those sorts of people should be in charge of the party. What I'm suggesting is that we should be a bit more encompassing on the right, where we can actually say what our real values are and work towards those, which means that we might have a few wingnuts on our side, but they're our wingnuts, right? They're people that we say, okay, we agree with you on this stuff, this other stuff we're not going with, right? We're not going with full socialism, we're not going with all that sort of stuff, but containing the excesses of big corporations, and especially private equity, we're right there.
Well, the populist left and the populist right agree on one thing, and that is this opposition to this nexus that we were talking about before between big business and big government.
Yep.
Although the populist left still like their big government, they do hate big business, and they will align with us to fight that control and that bureaucratisation.
Yeah,
I don't just talk about money for a minute.
I think they want the money.
And I want to bring it back to Australia and talk about the bucks, because the cleverest thing that ever happened in this country in terms of what the left did was they got control of all the social institutions, right? They controlled and infiltrated. We've talked about this before, mate. They controlled and infiltrated the churches. They controlled and infiltrated education, academia first, now high schools, now primary schools.
Yeah.
They controlled and infiltrated the media. So we've got this, very left-wing ABC. We've got corporate media. Nine Network is extremely left-wing now and pushing left. Their radio station, they've bought the radio stations that were conservative, 2GB, 3AW, 4BC. They're all pushing left now, or more left than away from the right. We've got the Sydney Morning Herald and Age are under 9, so that's all that. 10 is a very left-wing network. That's CBS, owned by Paramount and CBS.
Well, that's because they almost broke, didn't they, Channel 10?
Well, they're in a lot of trouble. But the only thing that the left hadn't tackled and hadn't got control of was capital, money. And they did it under Paul Keating by establishing the superannuation funds, the industry superannuation funds specifically. So we've got $4 trillion of capital under management, assets under management, sitting with the superannuation funds in Australia. That is per capita, that is an enormous amount of money. And I think we heard people in Parliament applauding that the other day, how wonderful it is that Australia's got all this pension money and we can invest that. That's great. Okay, fantastic. However, half of that money, $2 trillion, sits with industry super funds. So super funds or the public sector funds, which are controlled by the left. If you look at the industry super funds, they're all union connected. They're all connected to Labor Party in some way. They've got Labor Party people on the ex-Labor Party people on the boards. They have a couple of Liberals thrown in to make it look slightly balanced. You know, they're always happy to take a board position. Yeah, Liberals with a small L, very small L. And that's the game. The game is capital. And that is a big factor in terms, I mean, you could forget the asset management for the American asset management firms. This is a much bigger problem for Australia because that much capital in the hands of the left being directed into corporations to make those corporations left and to grow those bureaucracies and to grow the nexus with government, keep government big, and just keep milking and living off tradies, small businesses, working Australians. That's the divide in this country right now. It's between the working people and the productive people and the people who suck on the teat of these bureaucracies and bludge off the rest of us. And I am sick of it. And that is what a new party has got to tap into. But I just don't know how that can happen.
And that ties into our next topic, yeah.
Sorry, if I just want
you wanted to go into finance, right?
It's a feedback loop. It's a disgusting feedback loop. Because if somebody says to me, what should I do to become in charge of multi-billion or tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars worth of funds in Australia, don't bother studying finance, mate. Go do industrial relations and go get a job for a union. Now, I cannot imagine any reason why being a union boss or a politician qualifies you to make investment decisions.
It doesn't.
But I'm going to say something from my old broking days when I was a young whippersnapper and quite brazen and going out there with not the experience I needed. But I would say to people that they should take more control. And I would say to them to set themselves up with their self-managed super funds. And what I would say to them, I'm going to say this to the camera as well. Most of us are told that the biggest investment we'll ever make, the biggest purchase we'll ever make, is our family home. And for most Australians and most Americans, that will be true. Equally as big or similarly as big for most Australians is going to be their superannuation fund. This is supposed to be your life savings that takes you from retirement through to the time that you die. So it should be something that's pretty important to you. So if you're watching this show, I have a question for you if you have a superannuation fund. Somebody is managing your life savings on your behalf. What is that person's name?
Wayne Swan.
No, the person who's in charge of your actual superannuation fund, yours personally.
Sorry.
What is that person's name? If you don't know that person's name, there's a problem. If you don't know what that person is doing, what that person's life ambitions are, who that person is, or anything about them and their family, there's a problem, and maybe you should consider taking your super out and managing it yourself or putting it under the control of professionals that you know and that you pick.
This leads into our next topic. A lot of people have been looking at the US win and they're like, this is great. Make America great again. I'm feeling their love. Nature is correcting. We're seeing these phenomenal picks from Trump's administration. Kennedy, make America healthy again. Tulsi Gabbard, and you know, the Department of Government Efficiency. Awesome. This is really good. Trump's revolutionizing America. That surely means that Peter Dutton's going to win the next election in March or May next year. And to that, I would reply this article from John Roscombe from the Institute for Public Affairs, who do great work, Why the Libs Can't Do a Trump. And this leads into the myriad of problems that Damien and the rest of the panel have alluded to with regards to the Australian fight. And this is the crux of it. He said this is essentially why. Authenticity. The Liberals and Peter Dutton, they lack authenticity. It's not that they don't have it. We've seen Peter Dutton demonstrate authenticity in going after the media, like during the voice referendum, but it is not his prime programming, and he's going after more of a moderate sort of approach, and it's going to fail. It's going to fail, and it doesn't bring me any pleasure in saying that, but it is going to fail. Where do you guys see this country going with regards to another 3 years of Albo, if we assume that for now?
My biggest concern, given the silence, I'll go first. My biggest concern is that they'll increase their. From what I understand here, this misinformation bill is going to die by one vote. My biggest concern is that there's a potential that they could increase the seats in the parliament or increase the Senate, their Senate positions, which gives them more power. Pauline Hanson's cartoons does a very good job of this when they say, this is not what 30% of Australians voted for. I mean, what if they get 32%? Whatever the numbers are, I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are before the misinformation people come after me. I'm deeply concerned about that. But I will say this, if we could find somebody from outside of politics, maybe we would have a fighting chance. I think that they would get a lot of success if they tried to come in without going through the normal political channels. If the United States can produce a Donald Trump and the UK can produce a Nigel Farage, I believe in Australia we can produce somebody. Don't look at me. We can produce somebody, and we've got a lot of people that are. What we need, I think, is that eccentric, larrikin kind of Aussie, right? That bloke that jumps up and says, right, this is what we're doing. Because I think Australians will gravitate towards that person much more easily than they will some overeducated inner city moron. Or the real problem with diversity in our politics is you've got a bunch of lawyers in there.
There's no diversity in our politics.
Outside of law
and it doesn't,
is actually sitting in our politics.
And it doesn't seem like it'll be anyone who comes up from the rank and file of the party, because that's not a crop of people who are values driven. So you look at the U.S. Republican Party win, right? You have Donald Trump, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy. You have Elon Musk. This is sort of the Avengers. Tulsi Gabbard. Most of these people start out already rich and on the outside. They can't be bought. Right, and so they. But on the other hand, you have the Senate and the House. A lot of that, the swamp monsters are still in charge. You know, the Senate majority leader is a swamp monster, and so the real fight now in the U.S. is that, okay, yes, the populists have won the White House, but the House and Senate, are they going to still be bought out by the powers that have been controlling them for a long time, or will Trump bring them along? Here in Australia, unfortunately, it seems like we're lost in the wilderness. We do not have a values-driven, core to bring us away from the direction that we've been going.
We've got the 5 C's, as you said before,
yes,
and the worst one is the career politicians. And the Liberal Party is absolutely full of these young kids that come straight out of uni with their young Liberal hat on, and they bounce into the Liberal Party, and then they get a party job, and then they do something else, and they hobble around for years and years, and they finally get given a little council ward, and then they get a little state seat, and then they get a little... The party is full of these kids, and they're all the same. They're all one type of people. Yeah. And we need diversity of opinion, diversity of background. And I don't know how we fix this problem, because the Westminster system is not a great start, because you can't have ministers that are coming from outside Parliament. You can hire your director generals, your departmental heads, who really are they're the people who really run Australia anyway. So you can actually hire your Elon Musk and stuff into that, but they don't for some reason. Liberal parties never bring in good business people or outsiders. They always promote government people to these government positions, which baffles me. But anyway, we need a revolutionary...
Because we don't want them, that's why.
Sorry, mate?
Because we don't want them. I left Australia for this specific reason, right? People always complain that I left Australia because of taxes. That's not the reason I left Australia. I left Australia because I don't want to have to put up with all the paperwork and all the crap.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can go to so many other places in the world where I can just operate, right, and be left alone.
Well, I don't want to start my business. I had a business in Hong Kong. I'm not starting it here. Go jump in the lake. No way in the world am I going to hire any, anybody.
And that's why you don't see the real entrepreneurial people in this country actually taking these sorts of roles in government departments. Because what they're going to do is they're going to say, we need to make these departments smaller, and we need to make these departments more efficient so that it's more conducive to the type of environment that would encourage businesses to actually exist. They're not going to do that because small business owners are just like, oh, to hell with it, it's not worth the fight.
No, that's right. And they're too busy drowning in red tape. And that's part of the game, actually, is to tie small business people and entrepreneurial people and innovative people and motivated people up. But what it does is it destroys your nation. And I think you've hit right now, we are talking about probably the most important issue that our country faces right now. And that is the fact that there is no spirit or drive for excellence or to create or innovate, because the minute a young person goes, I've got a great idea and I want to do this, the next thought is, oh, shoot, I've got to deal with all that red tape. I've got to deal with the government. I've got to deal with those employment laws that just make life hell. I can't even hire and fire the people that I want. If I hire someone and they're crap, I can't get rid of them. You know, why would I want to take on all that? But you know what? I think I'll just go to the beach. And I know so many, it's not just young people, I know so many people my age in their 50s who are like, you know, should be the people starting small businesses now and hiring a handful of young people. And they're not. They're sitting on the beach at Noosa retired because they can't be bothered dealing with the laws and the red tape and the hassles of employing people. And we have the unions to thank for that. Well-meaning in some cases, protectionist in others. But the unions are to blame. We've got too many laws protecting employees and not enough laws protecting employers. And so you just lose your employers. They leave the country. I didn't know you weren't actually still here. I'm leaving next year because I can't cope with this anymore. I certainly would love to grow a business here, but I will keep my business going. I'll just run it from somewhere else because you can now. You know, I'll keep the other side going, hopefully, if we get support for it, which is the other thing, right? I am so sick of having rich people tell me that they complain about the left and they will not support startup initiatives like what Joel's doing here with the Ark. I don't know how much support you're getting.
Back at you, mate. No,
I'm getting some from good people, some good people. But we are nowhere near break even as a business, right? Everything I do is voluntary on that show.
You keep looking at me. I haven't brought my checkbook. But
no, sorry, mate. I wasn't looking at you in that sense. I mean, and I wouldn't do that.
No, I'm joking.
I'm just simply, and I'm sure you do support other initiatives, but I'm just talking about, you know, I mean, I know a reasonable number of people who've got a bit of money who complain a lot about the left. And online too. And I've started pushing back, just saying capital needs to step up in this country,
and one of the
like
worst
it does in America.
One of the worst things they could do is throw money at the Liberal Party.
Which is what they keep bloody doing, or surrogates for the Liberal Party, like a certain organisation.
Which is why we're not putting that money up. That's the thing. That's the reason why. I mean, I've got 800,000 members of the Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce. The top 1,000 of those are people that I know personally, those families. Most of the top 1,000 will have net worths of more than 30 million US. We've got a fund of around 20 billion that could be invested in any Pacific Rim country, my favourite of which is the country that I was born in, here in Australia. There's no way I could get anything through. And I also couldn't justify it to them. This is the big problem. See, for me personally, all I wanted to do was to run a financial service, like a fund, right? Basically a managed fund. That's all I wanted to do.
Good luck.
I just could not get licensing. I couldn't get approvals. I just couldn't do it, right? Now, okay, I was pretty brazen trying to achieve that at 23. That was never going to happen. Fair enough, because I was too young and inexperienced. But I could have been mentored in the right direction. The problem was there is no right direction here in Australia. Okay? I get to 27. I get the opportunity to go over to the Middle East. These guys, and I'm trying to raise money for a derivatives trading fund with a very specific type of derivative, and trying to explain that to people in the Middle East that at that time didn't really have much familiarity with the markets. Didn't work out too well, but I did raise some money. Then I get to 35, and somebody says to me, hey, I've got some friends in Switzerland and they want to talk to you. I've been talking to them about you and they want to talk to you. And I said, yeah, I've heard it all before. I was a bit jaded by that point. I've heard it all before. It's all just crap. I'm not going. I'm not going to even pick up the phone and talk to them. So they started ringing my business partners and traders that I trade with back when we were sort of just running our own thing with no clients and just using our own money. And every day for about a month, you know, the people closest to me said, look, maybe you should just pick up the call. I mean, just take a call. They've been calling us, you know, every day. So I picked up the call, and 2 nights later, I'm on a first-class flight with Emirates over to Emirates Airways from Perth to Dubai to Switzerland. In 6 weeks, I was able to get licensed, funded, or commitments for funding, and not funding like 10 million or 20 million, which was a lot of money to me at the time when I got that from the Middle East. I had $1.5 billion committed to me in euros. Then they were talking about US facing, we had to be licensed in another jurisdiction. I had another 1.3 billion committed to me there. All of that happened within a few months. I could fly back to Australia, and then I've got to go and speak to my lawyers and say, am I legally allowed to operate a fund from here? The fund and all the licensing is done over in Liechtenstein. But am I allowed to actually execute the trades from Australia, or could that be deemed as me trading on behalf of a foreign thing? So there's all this sort of complication.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I mean, you know what? The hell with it. I'll leave.
Yeah.
I'll just leave.
So Australia loses the fees.
Exactly.
On how much? How much possible and potential assets under management money? About $6 billion.
In Aussie dollars, yeah.
So $6 billion, if the fees are 2% or 1%, right? That's still a truckload of money that
and I haven't even mentioned what happens in Singapore. Now then I popped through. I'm on a flight through Hong Kong, and I'm not going to name them, but I ran into a few politicians. On both sides actually. They happened to be both sides of the political aisle. They just happened to be in the lounge at the time, and I'm talking to them. They said, "Oh yeah, you should come back to Australia. I mean, be a little bit patriotic." And I said, "Patriotic? I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to operate. But even if I am allowed to operate out of my house in Dalkeith in Western Australia, you still wouldn't allow me to take investment funds from Australians because apparently I'm not qualified enough or good enough. So I can only earn this money on operations I have outside. And then you want half? You want to take 45%, or at the time it was 47%, plus the Medicare levy on my income? So basically, you think as a country that you and the government rules that you've set up, that you are as responsible as I am for the success that I've had.
And that's just one industry. That's just the financial sector. That's just the financial business.
But your money would be so well spent.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. But this is my real issue. Right?
Making more laws.
If somebody wants to be an actor or a singer or something like that, fair enough that they may go to other countries because the market's bigger. But other people who are business people or something like me, I just want to be a trader. If you're a crypto trader or something like that, you're looking to go overseas because of stupid regulations, and we lose our best and brightest young people for no other reason but because of stupidity in our government.
The biggest communist country on the planet has almost more liberal laws and regulations around the financial industry now than we do, because they realise they need to get the capital coming into the country and flowing into the country. So China's not stupid. And here we are drowning in this red tape. Now that's the finance industry. I don't even want to talk about the housing industry, right? And property and building.
I'll tell you.
Do you know what the corporate rate of tax is in Russia? Let's go prior. I'm not sure what it is now. Prior to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
10%.
What the corporate rate of tax is? 13%. Do you know how long it takes to get licensed to run a financial services firm out of Russia? About 3 weeks. But you know what?
I was going to say 3.5 minutes.
It only takes, well, it depends how much money you've got to start off with. But you know what? You can get licensed out of New Zealand quicker than you can get licensed out of here.
Good God.
I don't want to rant.
People's Communist Republic of New Zealand.
I don't want to rant and rave too much more about the financial industry in this country. I'll just say one last thing if I can. If you have a look and see that the Australian Stock Exchange had a legitimate takeover bid from the Singapore Stock Exchange that was blocked by, I think it was Costello, but it might have been somebody else, that was blocked as not being in the national interest. The reality of the situation was the Singapore Stock Exchange has such high revenue and such high assets that they had enough money to buy the ASX and run it more efficiently than we could run it here. And that was.
And they're not a huge exchange. The Singapore Stock Exchange has its own problem.
Right. So they wanted to do that 15, 20 years ago. That's when they wanted to do that. If there's not a problem in Australia on finance, I mean, clearly there is. Look at all the other industries.
Speaking of Russia, can we pivot to the not fiddling while Rome burns and get away from finance into World War III? What do you think?
No, in a bit, the reason I wanted to ask that topic about where you guys seeing the next three years, and it sounds like we're moving some of your businesses overseas, if not already.
I'm moving myself overseas.
Moving yourself overseas.
You'll have to get me in on Zoom.
That's right. No, I don't blame you. The reason I ask is, look, I don't know business. I know construction. I know approvals, DAs, and all of that. And I worked in the industry and saw it real time with regards to how much does it cost to build a small to medium construction project. At least 10 stories, for example. And I saw in real time in 2020, the prices changed. They were already expensive from government regulation and, in climate policies, arborist reports, Aboriginal, if you want to tender for a government project for construction, like 5% or something has to be Aboriginal owned companies and all this, just a lot of red tape. And then to make matters worse, COVID comes along. Our industry is already decimated with regards to how we supply our basic electricals in the ceilings, in the walls. Anything to do with energy makes everything expensive.
Yep.
We used to have the second cheapest energy in the world. Now it's one of the most expensive per kilowatt or something. And I look at what's going on in construction, and I'm like, mate, no wonder there's a housing crisis. You don't have enough builders. You got too much regulation. The amalgamations of the councils was one of the worst things you ever did. And we're seeing the perfect storm because we've got mass immigration. Like every year, we've got like 1 million people. It's the highest per capita. 30% of the country are immigrants. 53% are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. There's too many people coming in. It's ruining the deal, and people aren't even buying into our values. Now, look, that's what I'll say on that topic. But one thing I definitely know about 100% is where these elections are going. And you heard it here first, folks. Remember the date, because we're 5 to 7 months out from the next election. But you know me, I like making predictions, and they're usually bang on, scarily correct. It was about the 25th of October. I came to the realization, and I was talking to someone from the left, and I was talking to someone from the right, and it appears to me that the next election is going to be another Labor win. It appears to me that Albo is going to win a minority government. And why am I so confident? Well, I'm looking at what these people are doing in these think tanks on the right. I'm looking at what's going on with the Liberal Party. I'm looking at exactly what's going on with the seats that they're targeting. They're not targeting the right seats.
Right.
Now, if we could just bring this map up, the reason why I'm trying to get these maps out to as many people as possible, anyone that'll listen, is these particular maps show you exactly the right seats to go after. Again, if you want one of these maps, you can email me at joel@thearkpodcast.com. These maps are critical because what they show you is the last election results, but also the referendum results overlaid with it. Why the referendum results? The referendum results show you, it's basically was our MAGA vote. If you voted against the voice, if you voted no, if you were part of that 60 to 70% that didn't like what Albo was buying, was selling you, then you're more likely to believe in freedom of speech, conservative values for your kids. You're against the LGBT agenda. You were probably against the jab. You're against the lockdowns. There's a very high predictability with that. Now, you would think that a lot of these think tanks on the right, you would think that the Liberal Party would therefore be targeting the seats that voted the highest sort of no areas. They're not. They're actually targeting 60% yes voting areas. So when I look at this map, in order for the Liberals to form government, they need to find 19 seats. I don't see it from their strategy that they're doing. I don't see it. So that means that there's a domino effect that's going to take place over the next 3 years. And sorry, give me some rope. Stick with me for a second. Let's assume for a second that Albo gets a minority government in the lower house. He still forms government, but he has to go in coalition with either the Greens or the Teals. That then means Peter Dutton is going to be seen as a failure. The Liberal Party will turf him out. They'll say, you're unelectable, you're XYZ. They do this every time.
Well, they didn't do it with Tony Abbott.
They got rid of him after something like 40 consecutive polls where he lost. So he was actually a winning prime minister, and they still got rid of him. But the left play really good battles like that in the Liberals. They will turf, they will get rid of Peter Dutton. He will either resign or they will do a popular vote against him within the party. They'll put someone in a bit more like a Malcolm Turnbull or a Scott Morrison, which will be more left-wing, believe it or not, than Peter Dutton. They will inevitably lose at the next federal election after that, May 2028. And then it's only at that point we will see a situation where we can actually see a Liberal Party go back to its roots, the Menzies We Believe statement that believes in small business, the individual to start a business. Now, some of you might
Sorry, mate, so when can I come back to the country? 2028 or 2030?
Bear with me. One more thing. One more thing.
Damien,
After the Olympics.
I'm hearing some really great things about Saudi these days. It's becoming more liberal. There's some great investment
Hang on, mate.
opportunities. There's not a lot of government regulation. Let's
Go
move
ahead, Joel.
there for a bit.
One more thing, because this is critical, because everyone's going to probably be writing in the chat right now, and I can see it. They're like, Joel, what are you talking about the Liberal Party? You need the Liberal Party in order to form government. Why not vote minor party? That's what people are saying. The problem with the minor parties is they don't get more than 15 to 20% of the vote in each state. And they are not going to amalgamate until after May 2028, because Pauline Hanson is the dominant minor party. She has at least 5% wherever she runs a candidate, even if it's a ghost candidate. She always runs and gets at least 5%, which is more than any other minor right party. In May 2028, she's up for re-election. She will run, she will win that, and she will renew her 6 years, and she will hand that off to someone. A lot of people are saying James Ashby or someone else. Whoever it is, it's not Pauline. Their vote will collapse, and it's only at that point the minor parties will actually have to come together and form something new. I have a feeling of what that might be, but in terms of who is going to lead the right in this country, check back in May 2028 once we conclude.
Can I just say something to everybody who's sending a message now saying vote for a minor party or minor parties are the answer? Go do one of two things. Go hand out how to vote cards at the next election in your area for 2 hours at least, and watch the average voter and the way that they think and the way that they don't think actually.
Yeah.
So watch that. Secondly, and how disconnected and disengaged they are from politics. Okay.
Yeah.
Or run yourself for a minor party like I did, and you'll realise that it is really an uphill battle. That Australians are so wedded to voting for one of the two major parties that the only way to change things is for people to join the main right-wing party and make it the way you want it to be.
Make liberal again.
Make Liberals liberal again. We've got to get inside the Liberal Party. That's where the action is. That's where the game is played. It's not played outside. It's inside the party, and it can happen because so few people go to these branch meetings. Right? It's the same people. And if 100 people just got together and went, you know what, we're going to go to our branch meeting, and another 100 people in another area went, we're going to go to our branch meeting, and another 100 people, it wouldn't even need 100, 20 would do it.
That's what Antic did. And
Yep, that's what Alex did in South Australia,
So they've
and he
taken
did
it.
it. The religious right or the conservative right was able to...
It's happening in WA as well.
Yep.
You know, Antic in South Australia went round to all the churches. He said, look, if you vote in pre-selections, you get more people like me into office and not people like Malcolm Turnbull. That's not
got to join the party. Now, the problem is that they're keeping people out. So they're very... So you got to be a little bit sneaky about it, actually, probably.
So someone like myself, there's no way... I don't even...
I can't get... I tried to go back in after the election, and they wouldn't have me. So
You can force yourself into the party, but I think from a perspective of voters, based on what Stephen Peters said, which I didn't know, if you put a minor party first and then preference the Liberals or the Labor, if that's the way that you're inclined.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You take away their, what is it, $3.80 or whatever it is per voter.
Yeah, $4 to $6.
So, yeah, take their money.
Yeah, it's
maybe then you
Well,
get
you have to get a
idea,
certain
but
number of
few
votes
people
to get
do
that money. So if you don't get, I think, 4% of the vote, I got 2.7%. So I just blew 15 grand of my own money. I didn't actually get anything back out of it, right? Which I wasn't seeking to do that. Would have been nice to have some money to play with, but I probably would have given it to the Liberal Democrats, who was the party that I ran with. But I think, unless we're making that change inside the big, it's really about marketing and branding more than it is about the game. Because I mean, Australia's actually set up pretty well for.
There's a few things.
Preferential voting is pretty good.
100%
right?
preferential voting, publicly funded elections. There's a few things going for us. And by the way, guys, this isn't a Liberal Party shill page. We are the hardest on the Liberals ever. Like no one else. Sky News, I wish they were more hard on the Liberals. There's nothing stopping you from joining the Liberal Party, voting in pre-selections. And if they don't do what you're happy with, you can still have the liberty to go and vote and volunteer at the election for your favourite minor party. But in
a lot of people don't realise that.
They don't realise that. And that's what's funny. There's a great line in the Bible, my people suffer because of their lack of knowledge. We're like a soccer team that doesn't know the rules and we keep getting red cards and we don't understand why.
Yep.
That's why this show exists. That's why people like Damien Coory do a phenomenal job in what he's doing on his show. But look...
I think the reason why we are so hard on shows like this on the Liberal Party is because I'm going out on a limb and making an assumption that most of us are formerly Liberal or
we
still
care.
currently Liberal.
It's like why we're hard on Australia, mate. I mean, you were saying before, I'm down on the Australian people. You were down on Australia as generally in the business side of things, and it's like,
But not the
we're down on
Australian
Australia
people.
because we love Australia.
Exactly, not the Australian people. I love the Australian people.
Absolutely.
I think this is the best country that you could live in if we just had some decent management. And although I am born and bred Western Australia, well, I haven't bred, but born in Western Australia, I think Sydney is one of the most beautiful cities that you could have. But you try going out on a Friday night in Sydney, and it's dead compared to what it was when I was a teenager. So I don't like the way the place is run.
No.
But I love Australians and I love this country. And I just hate to see all of these opportunities that are being continually taken away from us. The Liberal
we're
Party
all here
I
because we're
flirted-
fighting for it.
Yeah.
We're all at this desk because
Absolutely.
we're fighting for Australia.
Now, I flirted with
I can't think
joining
of
as
anyone
a-
I'd rather be really tonight, though, guys. It's nice. And I'd like some more whiskey, please, Joel.
I left you the bottle next to you, actually.
Did you? Oh, my God.
I did. So go.
I flirted. By the way, I'm drinking iced tea. I don't know what he's on. I flirted with joining the Young Liberals under John Brogdon when I was a teenager, or more so, they were actively trying to bring me in. And I very seriously, considered a career in politics because of some of the things that I was unhappy with, or some of the things that I wanted to make changes to, right? And with all of that ambition and the ideals of that teenagers have, and well, first I'm a dual citizen, so I couldn't have done anything, but I didn't know I was a dual citizen at that time. But the reality is that I think that I would be a good contribution to any country. And the fact that people like me end up leaving in frustration, and then when you get a little bit older, I'm 40, so I'm not too old, but you look back at Australia and go, well, do I want to come back and bang my head up against the wall and butt heads with politicians and government, or do I just want to live my life somewhere where I've got more freedom? Do I want to get back together with my ex, or do I want to just continue the relationship with the beautiful girl that I've got now? That's kind of the question, and that's what happens with Australia. So you look at Australia and go, look, I'm not going to sit here and argue forever trying to get things done. I'm just going to go take a moment more just to go on one more slight rant, if that's okay with everybody.
Certainly.
Milk. So
Yes.
It's going to sound totally random.
I think about milk every day.
Sound totally random, okay? So,
where's he going?
Having travelled to the Middle East, you go to the Middle Eastern shops and you see the like Carrefour and places like that, and you see all the different meat products, and you've got like Indian and Pakistani meat, and you sort of keep going, across all these different countries, and then right at the top of the list, the most expensive stuff is Australian meat and New Zealand meat products.
Yep.
Okay. They love our products. They love our produce. And I would say, having travelled all over the world, that our agriculture is the best quality in the world by far. They want our milk. China wants our milk. And we're not selling it. If you guys remember the baby formula stuff, Coles and Woolworths used to put a limit on how much you could buy. Why? Because Asians were buying it and shipping it back to Asia. Now, I don't know if I'm the only genius that thinks like this, but if they want our stuff and it's causing shortages in our grocery stores, shouldn't we just produce more of it and sell it to them?
Good God, man. You stop making sense.
So, from what I understand, what we needed to do in order to bring up that supply was we needed to build a milk processing facility that would have cost around $20 million. Now, that's nothing for private enterprise and it's nothing for government. A lot of money for us, but from enterprise or government, that's nothing. Not only did they not fund it, but as I understand it, they actually blocked other companies from doing it when they wanted to. What was the result? The result was two things. One, that some Asian investors, especially Chinese investors, started buying up farmland in Australia so that they could actually ship the stuff themselves. And two, we lost that to Fonterra in New Zealand. Now, I have nothing against Fonterra and I have nothing against New Zealand. But while our farmers are trying to expand into other markets, this was an obvious one. And that $20 million would have resulted in an extra $2.5 billion in milk exports from this country. $50 million a week, and that's just talking about the milk that we would have brought out of Victoria and New South Wales.
You can't encourage productivity in our farmers. That's where we're putting our wind farms and our solar panels.
And that's the reason
Can't
why
put a
people
good
like me
wind
go-
farm up if you've got a cow in the way.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why people like me go overseas.
Exactly. And so, look, the reason I bring up all of this, with regards to economics, with regards to elections, is no one's going to tell you this. No one's going to tell you this. We're going to be completely honest with you. This is what these gentlemen are doing with their business. This is what, I see with regards to going forward with elections. I don't have a vested interest. I'm not running. I'm not a member of a political party. I'm telling you guys this so you can sort your lives out, because you've got kids, you've got businesses, and you want to actually flourish. That's why I do this. I don't do this because I get, $1 million a year from the Liberal Party or some crap like that. I do this because I care about you guys. You come up to me in the street. You come up to, I know Damien Coory gets this all the time. People come up to him and say, thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for, being unchained from some of these organisations. I want you to be able to sort your lives out with reliable information. I was really troubled during the pandemic. I was at a protest in 2021. I was about 24, 25 years old. Someone came up to me and said, thank you for what you do. I made a decision to mortgage my house on the basis of what you said.
Shit.
And to sell it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I said, I don't talk about that stuff. How did you make... And that's the thing. People need that information to make a decision about their lives. So look, it's not all doom and gloom with regards to the elections. 3 years is actually quite a short time. After May 2028, I can't see beyond that mountain, but I'm very optimistic about the MAGA wave that's going to come after that. There's a lot of building that people like me and others have to do between now and then to build the infrastructure. What happened with Trump with the swing states? People like Charlie Kirk targeting the 7 swing states with infrastructure, ballot harvesting and all that kind of thing. It didn't happen overnight. That was 4 years of building, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think last year, Charlie raised $100 million just to fight this election this year. I'm dealing with a budget of like less than $1,000 a week with regards to everything that I'm doing. Now, once a lot of that money works out that it's not yielding the results with regards to these next 2 elections, I'll be right here with a bunch of credibility, a bunch of projects that we've already delivered on, and the numbers to prove it. I mean, the numbers, Damien, you get on your YouTube, it craps on the ABC. Like, we were looking at our stats from the other night, our live stream, concurrently with the ABC's Q&A live stream.
Yeah.
We I think it was like 5 or 10 to 1.
So my
Sky News just goes nuts too, and I mean on YouTube they get a lot of most of because they have a massive audience and following in the US because Americans like to watch, particularly Rita Panahy's
Lefties Losing It.
Yeah, it's a massive show in the US, and people know her from that over there. I think it's 1.5 million views as soon as it goes out. So that's the media, right? So what Capital's got to realise, Mr. Capital, Ms. Capital, whoever you are out there. Is you've got to stop funding think tanks and organisations. I love think tanks. You can keep funding them, but you've got to say to yourself, how many people are they reaching?
Yep.
Right? They hold an event, they get 700 people, and everyone goes, oh, it's so popular, it's so fabulous. Joel Jammal's The Ark is getting thousands of views and hitting young people and the people who really matter and that sort of thing. And, we're putting the money in the other direction because it's more seen or more for some reason it's like, oh, because it's an event.
It's got a higher status.
And I'm not going to name and dump
higher
on any conservative events or organisations because I like them all and I think they're doing a great job and everybody needs to pull together and work hard. But I should not have a podcast, a show that is rating in 5 figures. Who am I? I'm an ex-journalist who hasn't worked in journalism for 20 years, comes back to Australia, sets up a news show. What the,
That's why I said
how am I doing this? I'm doing it because it's not big, the real news isn't being provided by anybody. I don't even have a staff. I don't have any journalists on staff. I've got nothing.
Yeah.
And we've got that sort of audience. It's like,
that's
if I
why
was
I
in
said-
America right now, if Joel was in America right now, there'd be people, can we give you some money? Can we grow your business? Can we help you? That is what would be happening. And in Australia, it does not happen. Why? What are we doing wrong? Where is capital? I mean, I've got a bit of money. I put money into it. I put my time into it every week, so I'm not going to put any more in. It's time to pony up, folks. You've got to support these businesses and these startups that are doing the right thing, but you've got to be realistic and look at who's got the audiences, who's getting the traction, right?
It's a million views a week. People don't realise, and it's because when I upload one video, it goes to 25 different accounts on different platforms.
Yeah.
Because of censorship. See, Friendly Geordies, I love Friendly Geordies. I love what he does. I think it's great. I don't agree with everything, but it's good. He only needs one YouTube. He only needs one Instagram. He only needs one Facebook. He only needs one TikTok.
So he, just so people don't know him, he
He's
is
a
the
YouTuber, on the
my
left.
age. A lot of people don't know him. Your age would, but he is the number one political YouTuber in Australia
For the lefties,
right?
yeah.
And he's on the
absolutely.
left. Yeah.
And so he has one account for each of these platforms. I have to have five for the censorship-prone platforms. So that's like 25 different accounts on everything. So my views are spread across everything.
Oh, right.
And that's because of the COVID years, the censorship. It's like one page goes down on Instagram, so you need another 4 backups and all that. And so when it's not like we're just reaching young people, like we are reaching 1 million people a week, which and then when the elections come around, we put 6 projects out. We do 250,000 how to vote cards. Did you know 4% of people in Canberra in the ACT use our how to vote cards at elections? 4% of voters.
Awesome.
That's insane. In fact, 1.5% of all voters in Australia use our how to vote cards. So we actually are, it's not something I want to do. It's not something I sense that you want to do, Damien, but it's because there are people that say they're going to do this stuff, but they're not delivering the results. I should be in construction. I should be back into my industry. You should be building a multi-million-dollar marketing company.
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm a journalist and I enjoy doing what I'm doing. And I think you've actually got a very good skill for this. And I think that's great.
Thank you.
But I do see a lot of people who, one of the other problems that we've got is I always say, everyone's a media expert and everyone's a PR expert. I should have been a lawyer because then you walk in the room and people know you're the lawyer. But everybody can do media, And I talk to a lot of conservatives like, oh, well, I'll tell you how to do it. It's like, no, you won't. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but, I actually got the runs on the board. I've got a history of this. I know how to do. I know what I'm doing. There's a reason why this show has some success because I'm skilled at this and I've got experience at it, just like you've got experience at whatever
and you're
you do.
filling a credibility vacuum.
Right.
Mainstream media has lied to us 24/7 for years.
Yeah.
And at some point, people are tired of it and they look for an alternative, some place where they can go. People are telling them the truth. And they find you, or they find you, and that's what we need. We have to grow organically, despite the censorship, despite the shadow banning.
Yeah. And we've got a friend who puts on events and does a very good job of that. Right now, I hate event management. Right, I'm not going to go up to him and go, oh, I can do events better than you can. Or I can put some, but this is what you hear so much, like, oh, I can do it. We can easily just put a studio together and have a pot and just sit around and talk about stuff. It's not that easy. And if you're going to do it every week in and week out, it's hard work, as you know, mate. And so, and Topher Field knows that. And I've seen Matt Wong and people like that who, brilliant at what they do.
Get burnt out.
And they get burnt out and exhausted, like I'm feeling right now at the end of 2024.
I get it.
And it's like, God damn it, where is the support? Like, why are we not getting any support here?
That's why I said a few days ago, and I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek, but if the ABC and the SBS can get billions of dollars worth of funding from the Australian government, if you go back, especially West Australia,
that's just immoral.
They had community-based radio stations. They had a community television station for a while there. Why don't they provide some funding for independent podcasters? Because they were always talking about community engagement before. That's what they should do. But just to come back a little bit on what you said before about where capital should be going, I think the reason why capital doesn't go to organisations that really would make a difference is because the people with capital aren't trying to actually make a difference. They're trying to network. That's what all these events are. Yeah. Having been, I went to I won't name the organisation. I went to a particular event with leading government people, the heads of state from multiple countries, and the entire event was just networking. Nobody cared about what the speeches were about. We all sat there and just played homage to whatever the topic was, but it was all about networking. And that's where the issue is. That's why I sort of come back to what I said before. We need to have organisations that are started where people can hobnob and network and actually have a clear line between point A and the thing that we're trying to achieve. And I think that you might find that a lot of the people that are currently associated with some of the more conservative organisations in Australia, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to have any friendly fire going on, but some of the people that attend those are not as committed as what they say they are to the sorts of changes that we're talking about making.
High net worth individuals are fiddling while Rome burns. I mean, if you don't realize this country is set up for a crisis, just on energy, for one example, and our dependence on foreign powers.
Right thing.
These people have a lot of pull. But instead of actually focusing on those values, they'll go to some of these networking opportunities or allow themselves to be gate-kept by people who don't actually share the values and the priorities that they need to have. If you want a country where your children are going to grow up in a stable, prosperous country, we really need to do something.
Why would a high net worth person care? So we've had a massive influx of immigration into this country.
It's to give back.
Death tax.
Why would a high net worth person? It's because it's to give back. Like the only reason I'm doing this is because my parents came to this country.
Same.
We want to give back to the prosperity.
That's right.
Lebanon is a highly corrupt place, and the only way to get ahead was basically through corruption, essentially. And you come to Australia. That's why Lebanese people, they do tend to flourish quite well. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're not some of them aren't the straightest bunch of people. But there is a big segment of them where they believe in family, they believe in hard work, and they work bloody hard. And Australia has given them that opportunity to flourish. Give back. It's important to give back as service to the country. And everyone that's done well, you need to look at that. There's got to be an element of public service that every rich person sees.
And to give your children a prosperous place to grow up in.
Yeah.
That's what I was responding to. That's what I was responding to. If you're worried about your children, you're a high net worth person. Absolutely, we should give back. All high net worth people should give back to the countries that made them, and perhaps to their own communities if they've immigrated or their parents have immigrated from overseas. Absolutely no question. We've had an influx of immigration to this country, which has created an almost anti-immigrant sentiment in this country. We're not an anti-immigrant country naturally. What we want is for people to come over, merge with society, amalgamate, integrate, build businesses, create a life for themselves and share their culture with us. That's exactly what Australia has been about. However, people like Pauline Hanson and many other people on the right talk about the affordability crisis and the critical housing shortage. The reality is that if you already own property, and if you're a high net worth person, and most or a lot of high net worth people in this country own property, why would you want them to end immigration? Why would you want them to curtail that? Why would you actually want what everybody on the right says? They should release more land, they should build more properties. You wouldn't, because the critical housing shortage forces up the price of your assets. Why would you care about inheritance tax or any other taxation when you can structure things through trusts and foundations and set them up overseas? Do you really care that much, to your point, about whether your children are going to live in a prosperous country? Of course your children will. If Australia goes to shit, they can move somewhere else because they've got all these resources. There's a huge disconnect, and all I'm pointing out is that a lot of the people that claim to be on the right are not necessarily as committed to what we, the people, actually want as we think they are. Right. A lot of them are, but in my personal opinion, everybody is selfish. People try to act like politicians, they're corrupt. No, politicians are just being selfish like everybody else would. Everybody's after feathering their own nest. Why would the wealthy on any side of the political aisle be any different?
Well, that's where the populist movement will grow. I mean, if the populist movement realizes we the people, realize how badly we're being sold out at all these levels, well, then they'll kind of get up and do something different than just pull the lever for one of the two major parties that are been selling them out for decades.
Yeah, classical liberal theory would suggest, though, that that people will. It's part of your self-interest to want your country to prosper, because if we have excessive crime, if we have social decay, if we don't have enough housing, we're going to get all these sorts of social problems. We're going to have all sorts of trouble. So
rich people get mugged too.
Yeah. So don't you want to work for the betterment of your country? I think what you were saying, Joel, is right. I think a lot of people are doing. I mean, I'm doing it because of that. I could be one of those guys at Noosa, on the beach and having a nice time.
Yeah.
And I don't blame any of those guys for doing that, because I see what they're up against.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are burnt out, and they've had enough. And but I think. I also don't want to hear them complaining about the left unless they're out there doing something, or they're donating something to the people who are doing something. It doesn't have to be me, just anybody.
Obviously.
Just get behind
obviously.
stuff.
There's
right?
a lot of good people.
Well, yeah. And I mean, we've just set up our, small time donation thing for just viewers, to give a couple of bucks. And there's so many lovely people out there that are donating who probably can't afford to, that are making that effort, making that commitment to contribute. And, I mean, it's just...
We had a similar situation with the... and the viewers know this, with the Don Junior tour when it went belly up, and we had Ticketek, we had Ticketbud. Ticketek refunded everyone in Sydney. Ticketbud had a joint account with Stripe, and we got cancelled. So all the ticket holders from Brisbane and Melbourne, their money was stuck in this Stripe account.
Oh wow!
And they weren't being refunded. And so obviously everyone's like, "Oh, Joel, you took the money."
That's immoral they can do. Did Stripe get...
I've been told Stripe's got like $100 million legal fee every year for Australia to deal with these sorts of lawsuits and controversies. So look, we're trying to resolve it, but again, people's money's still locked in there. So we set up an email, refunds@tpaust.com.au. If you need a refund, go to us, get a refund. And we have refunded something like $300,000 out of our own pockets to people. God. Just to back them, because they didn't pick this fight. They just wanted to come to a show to see Don Jr. But this is the sort of just one attack we cop for trying to bring someone out to Australia that can help us change the cultural narrative. Look at what happened with Candace.
Yeah.
I was reminded of a quote from Julius Caesar when he was being stabbed in the back. When he was first being stabbed, he was fighting them off until he saw his son, and he said, "You too, son." And then he stopped fighting. They killed him. I guess the toughest part about seeing this attack on the Candace Owens tour has been seeing Sky News, a lot of right-wingers saying, yeah, ban her, keep her out of the country, leading the charge. And I'm like, this is why I built a effing studio, because I still don't trust you guys. I remember what you did to Craig Kelly. I remember how during COVID you let us down because you needed that YouTube ad revenue. You didn't want to be banned. And you didn't stand up when we needed it. And there's a lot of former prime ministers and deputy prime ministers that didn't stand up during COVID, and now they want to whitewash over it. And I'm like, you guys let this country down. I am not fighting for you. I'm not fighting for the Liberal Party. I'm not fighting for the think tanks. I'm not fighting for the minor parties. I'm fighting for the people that watch this show, the people that come up to you. A beautiful couple the other day, they've lost everything, got kids and whatever. I say, hi, yep, whatever. I sat down, I had my meal with the people I was with. I get up to pay for the bill for the table that I was with. They went and got the bill. They paid for a $200 bill. Wow. You guys know who you are. I don't know. I don't know how to thank them except my podcast. I meet these people all the time, and I don't know how to thank them, so I just keep going with this. And that's what keeps me going. Those are the people I'm
the amazing thing, though, is you've got the audience, and I've got enough audience now to get a certain amount of advertising revenue. And I've only been approached by one advertiser.
I'll hook you up.
Pitched out to a bunch of Australian companies.
Okay.
But the one advertiser that approached us was from overseas. Oh, you're coming up on the algorithms as being the fastest growing news podcast in Australia, and we want to advertise on you. And they're doing great out of our show. Really great.
That's excellent.
Really good sales.
That's really
So where are the Aussies? Where are the Aussie businesses that want to reach, 40-plus-year-old Aussie men, which we deliver?
There are times in history where you need courage, all right? And we haven't encouraged courage. The people who have let us down during the pandemic, and the news organizations, the politicians that let this happen, and still haven't demanded accountability of the TGA, of the institutions. An event will happen again at some point where you need courageous people in government and in the media, and we cannot just whitewash over what's done and say, oh, let's let bygones be bygones. Absolutely not. You have to have people with courage. Otherwise, you're going to have a terrible result.
The other thing, too, though, is, I don't want charity. We don't want charity.
No,
the last thing that a couple of people who are independent, successful people want is going out and begging for bloody money. So I say to people on my show, don't support us unless you feel like you're getting value. If you're getting value out of the show and it's worth $4 a month to you, go ahead, support us. But it's with advertisers, it's the same thing. We actually have the eyeballs.
Yeah.
You need to reach that market.
Yeah.
Why are you advertising on, some network that's going to, probably not give you the eyeballs that has questionable ratings technology?
Not just the eyeballs, but not give you the truth.
Free-to-air television's ratings are kind of kooky.
Yeah.
And I wonder about, I would question some of that. But, why as an advertiser would you be supporting legacy old media and putting yourselves in environments that people don't really want to be in, that are not being watched, and ignore what is becoming the media? It's not the new media anymore; it's the media.
Yeah, look at the USA.
Yeah,
the USA, the alt media were like what they pulled off with regards to the eyeballs. How Vivek built an entire following just from hitting up all the podcasts, and RFK as well. I mean, that was how Trump courted that young, especially male vote.
Totally.
But anyways, guys, we're getting close to the end of the show. There was one more story I definitely wanted to make sure we covered, and it is with regards to what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. So Biden, he actually greenlit a launch with regards to the use of US long-range missiles by the Ukrainians into Russia.
Yeah, I know.
And this is a clear escalation, and it's in a bit of a lame duck period for Biden handing over power to Trump. So this isn't quite a peaceful transfer of power per se, but this is a very troubling development because now it's sort of giving Trump a bit of a ticking time bomb,
Absolutely.
So when he takes office officially in January 20th, it's like, well, have fun, this crock of crap you've got to deal with now. I just feel like they're stacking the economy, they're stacking the global balance of things against him.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the ATACMS rockets, and also there's the Taurus missiles, and I forget which ones but the thing is that none of these things can be shot into Russia without U.S. intelligence and guidance systems. So this is basically NATO hardware. NATO hardware is currently in Kursk in Russia. We have the rockets being launched into Russia with explicitly, it can't be done without the U.S. Guidance systems. So, I mean, this is absolutely insane. If you could imagine, the Russian rockets are being fired from Mexico into the United States, or tanks, kind of driving up Russian tanks, proxy tanks being driven up into California. This is with nuclear power beyond insane. We are gambling the whole world's population, every child in the world, over what? This is a war that's actually already been lost. The front lines are collapsing. There's no good that's come out of this. We've driven Russia into the hands of China. All the energy that was going into Western Europe is now going elsewhere. So again, cheap, reliable energy now going to other countries, and we've destroyed the reserve currency of the dollar. The BRIC system wouldn't have had that kind of pull if the collective West hasn't basically shown everyone that it's not safe to keep capital in the Western societies anymore. So we kicked Russia off the SWIFT system. We seized their reserve assets, and basically have told everyone that the collective West is not a place that you can safely keep your capital. We have destroyed our credibility. We have killed lots of people. But some generals in Western Virginia get to retile their bathrooms. So, that's an upside.
Yeah. No, I think I was really encouraged though on a couple of days after the Trump win. Obviously, we mentioned how Hamas said, "Yep, we want peace." Gulf states are severing ties with Hamas. Ukraine and had a firm talking to by Elon and Trump saying you're not getting any more arms. When we take office. We're seeing a lot more countries sort of come together with the US, but also we're seeing China sort of solidify its support and control over people like, Albanese and Starmer, which is really troubling.
Right now you've got the anti-war party of the hippies from the 60s, the Democrats and other left-leaning parties of the world saying, oh, isn't it fantastic we've got the Shanies on board?
Yeah.
How do you make any sense of that? I think the BRICS nations' success was inevitable anyway, but this has certainly accelerated it. We have in the West, and a lot of people don't realise this, we have 30% of the world's economy under sanction. Of course they're going to go and trade with each other. What would we do if it was the same situation? What's going to happen? Put this out there for you guys to respond to. If the BRICS nations said, you know what? We're not going to trade with you anymore. Can you imagine the effect that would have on us?
Well, given the strategic manufacturing and minerals that China controls, I don't think it'd be able to cure a staph infection if because we'd have a shortage of antibiotics, would have a shortage of steel, would have a shortage of all kinds of critical things because we've allowed ourselves to become dependent on the BRICS nations, and this and energy being among them. So yeah, we have created a situation where we are extremely vulnerable, and we have not yet woken up to it.
Remember what I said to you on election night about penicillin?
Yep.
That there's 4 major manufacturers in the world. 3 of them are located in China.
Yep.
Again, I've got no objection to China. China's doing what they should do in their best interests. But the result is that we say to young people in our countries, go fight for our values. Go fight for our freedoms. We won't say what our freedoms actually are. We won't actually articulate what our values really are. But just know that if you do get injured fighting our enemies, the medications you're going to be taking, we're going to buy from overseas. The bandages that are going to bandage up your wounds are going to be bought from overseas. Yep. The antiseptic creams and all that sort of stuff is going to be brought in from overseas. And we don't have enough doctors and nurses either, so we'll probably get overseas doctors and nurses to look after you with equipment that's manufactured overseas.
And our energy will be where we're going to get our windmill parts or our solar panels.
Exactly.
We've got to wake up, grow up, get smart fast, or we are in deep trouble. We're already in deep trouble, and I don't think people realise it.
Yep.
The Western world has lost its freaking mind, and the UK is a train wreck right now.
Absolutely,
we are not far behind. Canada is not far behind.
1984 was not an instruction manual.
Yeah. It is just we are in so much trouble, and it's a mindset of. There is a certain mindset out there of a certain percentage of people that just live in the most illogical, irrational. They walk around with concepts in their brain that don't match up, that just lead to blaringly obvious hypocrisy. And what makes me want to puke is they think they're virtuous. And you walk down the street and and this is why I get depressed and down a bit on people generally, because I think I go through what I call my Peter Hitchens phases, which is where, I always think of Peter Hitchens doing those interviews where he says, we're all doomed, it's all hopeless, the West is finished, there's no hope, And I feel like that so often. And when I feel like that, I put on some Peter Hitchens and I get a scotch.
And I
sit down and slap myself around.
A counterpoint to that, on the one hand, it is dark. There are all these forces that don't make any sense. But I have a thought, and I was talking to you about this earlier. I do think that the suffering and the lies and all that thing, it is leading to the Great Awakening. People are waking up to the idea that there are, that they have been lied to on many fronts.
I think a lot of people are, but God, it's so slow,
it is
and
so
it's
slow.
just exhausting.
It is,
and I'm so tired of having to say that. The same things we're all saying over and over and over again, and you still meet people, and they're just like, but I don't like Donald Trump.
People need more suffering in order to awaken.
It's like,
people need leadership,
what
and
this
that's
man's
why
achieved,
I keep saying that I think we should all, especially us that are, what would you call us, thought leaders, people that come out there and talk about different things, the international experience, we should set up alternative things to the World Economic Forum where we can bring people from all over the world. I mean, the Europeans are hating what the European Union has done. We should set these things up so that we actually have the firepower behind us.
We can't
because
print our own money,
on
though.
their own aren't going to do it, but as a group, they certainly can, and they will.
I think that's what
I do
conference.
I do want to bring something to your attention, though, Damien, and I'll show it to you after we finish this. So I'm a British citizen as well as Australian, and I've noticed that every single time that I say anything about particular politicians and leaders in the UK or say anything negative, I get certain searches of my online profiles, of which there's not much on me online, right? The things that are on there don't make me look particularly good. They're not completely true either, but whatever. And I have my social media accounts searched by certain law enforcement agencies in the UK every time I say something about the UK. I don't bully very easy, so I don't know whether they're trying to send me a message or if they're just checking up on me or what the hell is going on over there. But I think that the more and more that people get frustrated, eventually you're going to see people starting to have enough and expressing that. You've seen these riots and protests in the UK. And my question to the UK government and to the governments of most other Western countries is, if you are going to ignore the people when they explain to you what they want at the ballot box, you're going to shut them down on social media, you're going to shut them down on YouTube and all of that sort of stuff, so you're not going to listen to them. Then they try to disconnect from you and homeschool their kids and just get away from you, and you still come after them. At what point do you think this will end? Do you really think it's going to end because you're able to silence everybody? Because I can tell you the British people are not going to be silenced. The Australian people are not going to be silenced. And there is a limit. And if you cross...
Well, the Chinese talk about letting the valve out. You know, you've got to give people an opportunity to express their concerns, to say things online, at least a little bit of freedom. Otherwise, they will turn against you.
And if you cross the line, I don't know where the line is, but if you cross the line, I don't think the repercussions of that are very good. You cannot hold down the citizenry. And as I've said many times before, these are our countries, these are our rights, not theirs, and they need to start respecting that.
That's what encourages me about a lot of these things. And again, my little rant before about the electoral reality of the next 3 years wasn't to discourage you, it's to help you plan so you can get your crap sorted. I'm actually quite encouraged where things are going. I see cycles and I see patterns with regards to this stuff, just as you would see with finance and you would see with the failing marketing business, for example. What I see is things that are turning people into libertarians, less government, conservatives as well, wanting traditional values, not just sort of, go for it, like the 4B movement. What I see...
The 4B movement.
4B movement. What I see, for example, let's take something like the banning of 16-year-olds on social media. I think they're going to turn a generation of those under 16 into libertarians.
Yeah, it's a dumb move.
It's a really dumb move because these kids know how to code. They're just like, screw the government. Who do they think they are? They're going to turn a whole generation against it. And also a lot of older people is also saying, this is silly. We were watching Q&A on Monday. The whole panel was basically like, okay, look, we should ban it, but not for this beautiful kid in the front row who was like, saying, I should Oscar, who said I should be, this is going to stop me from being able to network and do all that good stuff, and I would be banned off it until May.
Any parent knows that YouTube is a source of. Sorry, man.
No, I was just saying good people break bad laws. That's all.
Yeah, that's what Topher.
Any parent knows that kids use YouTube for research.
We don't think that these kids are going to set up their own surreptitious networks using technology that we wouldn't even know about.
Exactly. And that's
the scariest thing about your election prediction, mate, is the 3 years where we're going to have a coalition Labor-Green government and the Greens and the Teals are actually going to have power. That scares the crap out of me.
You said that they need 19 seats.
They need to find 19 seats on that map, yeah.
Now, you're saying that they can't. How many seats do you think they could? Or do you think they're going to lose seats?
No, they can do it. But the problem is...
the trajectory they're currently going.
Let me put it to you this way, because we've just covered a US election and everyone's an expert the week or two after the US election, all right? There are 7 swing states. Now, do you remember when RFK pulled his name off the swing states?
Virginia was still a swing state. I only got it wrong by 1.5%. I'm just going to put that out there.
But let me put this out for a second. There were 7 swing states where it's like, okay, Republicans and Democrats, this is where the fight's going to happen. The problem is, in Australia, those swing seats that the Republicans, the Conservatives here, the Liberals are looking at, are the wrong seats. They're looking at safe Labor seats. They need to be looking, they shouldn't be looking at the 2022 election results. They should be looking at the referendum results, for F's sake. And that's what frustrates me about these guys. It's like, how could you not see that?
Joel, when you do look at that, what do you see? Is it like that donut theory that, the outer suburbs, this is
I'll show you.
Tradie, working class
if you look at this, and again, this is why I'm trying to get these maps to as many people as possible. So email me at joel@thearkpodcast.com. But what it shows is these seats here, and it's in better graphics when you buy it, obviously. It's really good. It's 60% yes. It's 60% yes. It's 60% yes on the referendum vote. But when you look at the Western Sydney suburbs, it's like 65% no. But the reason why the Liberals aren't looking at these seats is all they see is safe Labor seats. It's the same thing with Melbourne. In Melbourne, all of these seats, they all voted no, and safely no. But they're not. The Conservatives aren't looking at these seats. They're looking at Kooyong, which voted Safely, yes. They're looking at, Goldstein, which and this is the problem, and this is why I'm getting so frustrated, because, guys, I'm not in the establishment. If you haven't worked it out, I'm not in the establishment. I'm a Middle Eastern guy. I'm sorry, I've got to say it. I'm a Middle Eastern guy. I didn't grow up in a political family, but I know patterns. I know politics. I've seen it in the UK, in Canada, in New Zealand, in bloody South Africa. I know patterns. I know elections. And I'm telling you now, the Conservatives, all the millions of dollars, the $20+ million of dollars they're putting into the inner city seats, they're going to lose them. These are the areas that voted yes to the voice. They're not putting the money in the Western Sydney seats. And by the way, if I was wrong about this, then you have to answer this question. Why is it that Dai Lee won this seat, which was Western Sydney, and it was 65% Labor, and it was a seat that voted no? How is it that she took it off the Labor incumbent? And it wasn't just because Frank Carbone supported her and the councillors supported her. It's because the people in that area were conservative naturally. But the problem was the Liberal Party aren't running conservative campaigns.
So not only are they not standing up for their values, but they're also strategically incompetent as well.
That's right.
Well, a big question. So firstly, just because something is a strong Labor seat, like, let's be honest, right? The Teals, forget whether you agree or don't agree with them, they didn't just go after some marginal Liberal seats. They went after the bluest of blue ribbon seats. They went after McKellar, Bronwyn Bishop's old area, who still voted for a Liberal after Choppergate, right? They went after Warringah, Tony Abbott. They went after all of the die-hard Liberal areas. Why don't the Liberals find some testicles and go after some of the Labor seats? They absolutely should, for exactly the reasons that you've said. But here's a question that I've got for you, if you'd like to speculate on it. You've got a very wide audience. I'm sure that people at Sky News watch this show from time to time. I'm sure all the time, probably. I'm sure that the IPA watches this. I'm sure that many of the other conservative think tanks watch this sort of show. They've heard you talk about this. Why do you think that they're not responding and saying, actually, that's a really good idea, let's go and put the money there?
You've got to be very specific. Let's talk about the Liberal Party, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are the alternative government. The problem with the Liberal Party is you've got three factions, and let's just use these people as symbols for the factions. You've got Peter Dutton, you've got Malcolm Turnbull, and you've got Scott Morrison. These are the three different factions. Malcolm Turnbull's the far left, Peter Dutton's the leader of the far right, and you've got Scott Morrison, which is sort of the moderate middle Alex Hawke sort of group. The problem is the Conservatives don't have the majority of the numbers within the Liberal Party in the Parliamentary Party and holding the halls of power. They have more like 30 to 40% of the numbers in the party. You've got a bunch of moderates in the sort of middle. They call themselves moderates, but they control about 30%, and then you've got the lefties, which control about 30%. The problem is when it comes to writing policy, the Conservatives aren't powerful enough. Not enough people have joined the Liberal Party to vote within the party to shift the policy in a certain direction. That's why when Dan Andrews won in Victoria, the reason why he won is because the Liberals said, we want to do, for example, a 75% net zero on climate change. We want 75% net zero. That was higher than the federal Labor Party's net zero target. Of course, people aren't going to vote for that. Of course, they're going to vote for the actual Labor Party, not Labor Light.
Insanity.
That you need a difference. However, when they get a clear proposal between yes and no on the voice, Victoria, socialist Victoria, voted 55 to 60% no, because a lot of people didn't vote because they were disillusioned after the Victorian election.
The Liberal Party is not even a centre-right party now. I believe the Liberal Party is a centre-to-centre-left party, and the Labor Party is a centre-left to far-left party.
I'm with you.
And Australia doesn't have a centre-right party, because I don't even think it's a question of being conservative or socially conservative. It's being classically liberal or libertarian as well. There's nobody representing that group of Australians or leading that group of Australians and educating and articulating things in a way that group of Australians can go, okay, I can get behind this. There's no brand distinction or differentiation. If there's no brand distinction or differentiation, why change product?
Exactly.
Stick with the product you know.
Three fingers. You called Peter Dutton far right.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how not far right Peter Dutton is?
No, but this is the thing.
He's centre right, but in the Liberal Party, that is the far right.
But the idea, I mean, he's not even a classical liberal.
In terms of seniority.
Yes, I get that.
If you go back to the, and this is a great way to go back to it to understand the numbers, if you go back to when they were trying to get rid of Malcolm Turnbull, and they did, you had Dutton, you had ScoMo, and you had Malcolm Turnbull. Now, ScoMo won that because he split the vote once you remove Turnbull. But Dutton is the technical leader of the right, and we all know he's not. Now, does he every now and then, does he come out and say some great conservative stuff? Absolutely.
Pre-scripted.
Pre-scripted. But no, look, sometimes it's off the cuff. I mean, that time he went after that ABC journalist in Alice Springs and lambasted them about, why are you basically being an apologist for the pedophiles out here? That was brilliant. And it was off the cuff. He has it within his bones, but it is not, I don't know who's consulting for him, but they're saying be moderate, be normal. If you want to win an election, you can't be like Pauline. You've got to be a bit more down the middle. This is wrong. We need authenticity. Not being bombastic.
Authenticity and values.
Exactly, and that's what John Roscombe says in his article.
But this is where it also comes down to an issue of money, and I'm directing this at Damien, but it should be directed at everybody. But I don't want to sort of just keep beating the same point. If you're a business person and you're running a medium to large business, not a small business, not the mum and dad tuck shop down the road or Pauline Hanson's fish and chip shop, but you're a bit bigger, why would you bother putting your money behind the Liberal Party? Not because you support the Labor Party, but because your money's going to have more bang for your buck with the Labor Party, because you can go to them and you can ask for special favours, you can ask for special treatment, you can ask for regulations that are going to ultimately help you. Whereas the Liberal Party is going to be too bloody polite, they're going to be too moderate, and they don't want to be seen as protecting business at the cost of the workers. So what are you going to do? You're going to naturally go to the Labor Party because the Labor Party is more likely to help you. This is the massive problem that I've observed all over the world, is that there's a question between morally what should be right and fair, which most of us would agree is freedom for more people. And there's another question about how do I enrich myself and how do I make the most amount of money as I possibly can. Now, I personally, as an individual, I can't do it. I cannot get into bed with left-leaning parties for multiple reasons that I've expressed on previous shows. Not saying I never would, but certainly not on a moral level. But from the perspective of how do you get the best bang for your buck if you're going to give money to a political party, who are you going to hand that money to?
Yeah.
You're going to hand it to the party that's actually able to help you. And the party that's actually able to help you is the party that's trying to advocate for positions that potentially would hurt you.
Yeah.
Just follow the money. That's why they do it.
No, absolutely. And look, I guys, I look at these things and I see in these intractable problems that can be resolved, but we're running out of time. And it's like, okay, I'm assuming these aren't going to be resolved. I'm not seeing, I've got my ear to the pavement. I know what's going on in every state with the Liberal Party, with the minor parties. I can see where things are tracking. And I'm like, okay, this is the conclusion I've come to. And so I do see a silver lining. Everything is pointing to mid to late 2028 for a lot of these things. So what I'm going to do between now and then is build as much infrastructure as possible so that when we get to that point, whatever the political vehicle is, whether it's a fusion of the remaining remnants of the Liberal Party, people like Nick Goiran in WA and Alex Antic in South Australia that have done a very good job in filling the Liberal Party with true Menzies conservatives, and fusing that with some kind of new minor party, I don't know. But I will be throwing my effort behind whatever that is. And that's the silver lining coming down the pipeline.
And also, one thing, another point of hope, is that the narrative is going to be breaking hard. You know, if RFK Jr. gets in charge of the HHS, and the CDC director changes, and a lot of things get exposed, that will have downstream effects, narrative breaking effects that they won't be able to hide from here. And so, you know, there will be an acceleration of more investigations, more openness, hopefully some outrage that might accelerate the timeline of awakening of people coming to realize just how badly we've been sold out, and that will actually might be what helps you build your network.
Well, and then look, that's the thing. One thing I know for certain is a lot of people are like, okay, Joel, who's the Nigel Farage, who's the Trump of Australia? I don't know. I can tell you one thing. It's not me, and the person that it is, it's not on the scene right now, because I'm just not seeing what it's meant to be. I have some signs of what the person might be like, but one thing I'm dead certain about is you can't fatten the pig on market day. We've got a lot of building to do as a movement. I will be throwing my energy behind that because I know where the weaknesses are. There's 24 projects I've put together that will plug those holes. If Nigel Farage had these 24 projects, he would have won the UK election. That's how certain. That's
my big concern for Australia, and I certainly am full of hope and optimism for this country, but my big concern is what's happening in the other country that I'm a citizen of. We have now seen the UK, in my opinion, completely devolve under Keir Starmer's prime ministership.
Dark times.
Now, I had predicted that the Labor Party was going to win that last election, and I actually said, against my own party, the Tories, that the Tories deserved to lose it because they had done such an abysmal job. That gave the Labor Party the opportunity to do so much good. And what have they done? There are reports, which I don't know if they're true. They sound like they're a little bit overblown, but there are reports that they've tried to make room in prisons for people that have put memes up online. Now, that sounds like it's a bit more extreme than what the reality would be, but that's not the point. That's what the reports are. We're seeing people like Tony Robbins, what's his name? Tony Robinson.
Tommy Robinson, yeah.
Having rallies, and he's being attacked by the police and law enforcement, all that sort of stuff. You don't want that. You don't want to have that sort of civil unrest that's happening in the UK. And now the latest thing, you got the farmers that are protesting right there in Westminster, from what I'm seeing on the news, because of what they're calling the tractor tax or the inheritance tax. Now, I've only had a precursory look at this, but what they're talking about is having a 20% tax on the value of the farmland, which they're going to spread out over 10 years. Now, I think the reason why they're saying that is because then it's only 2% a year for 10 years. It doesn't sound so bad. But, farms don't make money every single year. We know that here in Australia, the way that we tax farms is a bit different. So we're seeing all of these sorts of issues that are occurring. But yet the UK has elected the Labor Party knowing that this was the sort of stuff that they were talking about. And Jeremy Corbyn was talking about a 4-day work week and free internet for everybody.
Yeah, full-blown left. I mean, it's communist.
Exactly.
It's Stalin-esque sort of, land taxing.
So my question for Australia, Damien, is do we need... is it going to require Australia to get as bad as that before we respond? Look at the Aboriginal cultural heritage laws in Western Australia. Yes. Okay. They've got these laws that have terrified the farmers. The farmers have absolutely no idea what they're supposed to do. They're saying, I get phone calls, and I'm certainly no expert in the law or in cultural heritage laws, from people that say, oh, look, my fence blew down. Am I allowed to build a new fence? And I'll go, what are you asking me for? I don't know. Well, can you ask one of your lawyers? And then I pass them on to my lawyers, and my lawyers go, we don't know. Right? This is the sort of damage that's being done. Even if the laws don't require them not to put up the new fence or not to need to go and get the cultural heritage, sign off or whatever, the issue is that they're terrified that they could do something wrong and that they could end up in all sorts of trouble. Who was it that just said before about a $1.5 million fine for selling vapes in Australia? We're seeing that the hand of government and the force of government is so heavy-handed that people are terrified.
Uncertainty destroys businesses.
Absolutely.
Business planning.
Can I just say, let's remember
in Australia? Do we need Australia to be as dysfunctional as the US has been in recent history, as the UK is becoming, as much of Europe is becoming, before Australians will stand up and say, I've had enough?
Meetings will continue until enlightenment occurs.
Now, look, that is the situation, and this is the thing. Remember, look at what the US just did. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. There are Elon Musks in Australia. There are Tulsi Gabbards in Australia. There are Patrick Bet-Davids in Australia. There are people that there's going to be a great realignment. There's a lot of our best players that are actually sitting on the bench. I meet them all the time. And when I see that, things can always get worse. I'm sure people are writing in the comments now, Joel, things are already bad.
I'm not very optimistic, I got to say. I do worry that people think things have got to get really bad before people will wake up. And I say, go back to that spending 2 hours in the polling booth. I mean, I went and handed out how to vote cards, and it's like, it was for a Libertarian Party candidate, and I was saying something fresh, something new, just to get people to take the brochure and read it, right? Something fresh, something new? Nah. Don't want something fresh, something just like the same old crap. Thanks. It's all good.
It'll come eventually.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm just feeling like the average Australian doesn't get, just like probably every other country, that people don't get economics. They don't get the sort of simple, obvious things.
Suffering is education.
It's like, you're just taxing the rich bastards. Yay. That's good. Redistribute. So, yeah, the pessimism kicks in. It's my Peter Hitchens moment. The other thing I want to just raise was just what triggered a thought when you were talking about not being able to define the rules and the laws and the land and everything. Property ownership. The question of having clear, defined property ownership is so critical. I didn't know this, but I was told by a historian that one of the reasons that the Roman Empire failed was when they stopped clearly demarcating property lines. And they sort of went, well, your property kind of goes to there, but it may not go there, and it may go here, and we might take that bit, and nobody ever knew. No one had a clue whether... And the problem with that is what it does is it says to anybody who wants to build on that property, you don't know if your investment's going to be yours tomorrow.
Yep.
And that's where we're at now. And that's what a lot of this indigenous land grabbing stuff is about. Taking away the certainty of people's land ownership. The certainty of people's property ownership means people won't invest.
Yep.
They won't work. They won't plan for the future. They won't build stuff. And we all suffer. And we all go backwards, or they go overseas, where they can determine their property rights. It's critical that people... I remember back when I was living in Hong Kong and everyone was like, okay, China had all these incentives. They wanted to make Shanghai the new center, right? And they said to all the big industry, you move from Hong Kong to Shanghai and we'll give you all these tax breaks and we'll do all of this. We're going to make Shanghai the... So the pharmaceutical industry went, yeah, okay, we'll go. So a whole bunch of pharmaceutical companies relocated from Singapore and Hong Kong up to Shanghai, their regional headquarters. Within 5 years, most of them were right back in Hong Kong and Singapore. Why? Because they couldn't enforce a legal contract in Shanghai, because the Chinese courts couldn't be relied upon to stand up for foreign companies. There weren't principles of law, rules of law that overrode politics. So the erosion of the rule of law is another thing that will destroy our society.
Absolutely.
And we have had some pretty weird stuff going on in this country around our legal system. We're seeing stories in the Australian now about these conflicts in New South Wales, and we saw the horrors that went on in the ACT, and they took down, I just remind everybody, how's this for symbolism? They took down the highest law officer in the land. Christian Porter was the Attorney General under ScoMo. They came after him, they being the radical leftist feminists within the ABC and the media, and then within the judicial system and the criminal system. They came after him on, allegations that related to stuff that happened when he was 17 years old.
Yeah. And she wasn't alive anymore.
And the poor woman had committed suicide. She had a mental illness. That mental illness involved psychosis, hallucinations. Her own parents said this isn't, her testimony can't be relied upon. Her thinking can't be relied upon, unfortunately. She went to the police. The police said, we can't make a case out of this. They still took him down. What a message does that send? We can
lawfare is alive and well.
We can get the highest legal officer in the land and destroy his career and destroy his reputation
on an allegation.
That's what they tried to do for Trump.
On an allegation.
Yeah, all these felony counts, all this lawfare that they, But the good news is that in that case it didn't work. Hopefully
Matt Gaetz though.
Yeah. They're trying with Matt Gaetz, but
George Pell. So the allegations there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the funny. I was joking with a friend of mine earlier today when he asked, do I trust this politician in the U.S. or not? And I said, well, if you've had false felony charges put against you, then I trust you. Otherwise, they might just have something waiting in the wings. So that's in this day and age, that's my true mark for whether I trust a politician, is if they try to bring you up on false charges.
Do you know what the 34 charges are?
Oh, in Trump's case, you mean?
Yeah.
The things they upgraded from misdemeanors to felonies and all that.
Oh,
meanwhile, New York
all
is
related to that one payment.
Meanwhile,
to
New
her,
York,
but was spread out over 11 transactions, right? But it was the one payment spread over 11 transactions. It was account for each transaction, for each check, for each invoice, and for each ledger entry. There were 12 ledger entries, so it was 11, 11, and 12.
For a loan
That's
that was
34.
for a loan that was paid back in a bank that didn't complain.
Yeah. Oh, that was the other one. No, I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
It's talking about the payoff to Stormy Daniels.
There's so many counts. It's too hard.
But here's
to
the thing,
keep
right?
up.
You've got New York, California, and many other liberal places that are downgrading felonies to misdemeanors.
Right, exactly.
And was it you, Joel, or somebody that said to me that sex offences in Victoria, that magistrates and judges have been advised to downgrade those or downgrade the sentences in order to make sure that recent immigrants are not deported. Now, again, let's have a referendum, and I'll tell you what I'll do. This is how confident I am. Let's have a referendum and exclude all of Australia and just have inner city suburbs, right? The inner city people respond to the referendum as to whether or not they think that's okay. I reckon even the inner city people would say, no, that's not acceptable. Okay, this is why I keep coming back to the politicians are acting as though they have a mandate for something that they clearly do not have a mandate for. And I think I said this to you on the election night. I've got, in relation to what you just brought up about the financing stuff, okay? I don't have 20 million. Wish I did. Don't have it. A few million short. But I can tell you what, I will get that 20 million in the next half an hour. If I can buy Mar-a-Lago for the $18 million that New York reckons that Mar-a-Lago is worth,
I'd buy it tomorrow.
I'll buy it like that. I'll make a couple of phone calls, and I'll have that money ready to buy Mar-a-Lago. I've got people that are involved in the art industry that buy arts, and I don't get it. I see some of the money that they spend, $50, $100 million, and they know people that will spend $300 and $400 million on artwork. And they've said to me that they're reluctant to buy art in New York because why buy it at Christie's or the other big art dealers in New York when they're going to get financing against that art? Because what they're trying to do is they try to make the art rare by having a collection that's closely held. So they then get a valuation, and they use that valuation to borrow money against. Sorry if I'm boring everybody.
No, not
the point being that if in 20 years from now, a particular AG in New York can say, well, that valuation was wrong, so therefore we're going to go after you, the obvious answer is that you don't buy it over there, you buy it in Paris.
They've made it unsafe to do business in New York. It's political risk. Just like the U.S. has made it unsafe for overseas countries to put their financial reserves inside our Western financial system. We are, the number of institutions that have thrown their credibility into the fire in order to maintain this narrative. Everything from the FBI holding the Hunter Biden laptop aside, and then also the 40 intelligence officials that said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, MSNBC, CNN, the polling that's been wrong year after year. The number of institutions that now have a fraction of the credibility that they did 10 years ago is amazing, and we really need to come around as a society, as countries, and reclaim the values and the integrity that we've lost. And we are in the wilderness for now. Absolutely true. But this will come along. This will swing back.
Hunter Biden could have ended up being an ambassador or a secretary of state or something high up in the government if he had have come out and the media had have come out and he said, yeah, listen, I was partying with business leaders and politicians all over the world and I developed a drug problem and I went off my nut, and you know what, I regret that, and I'm really sorry that a lot of people feel like I let them down. I'm not on drugs anymore, but I've got a wealth of international experience. Americans would go, You know what, mate? Yeah, cool.
Who doesn't have a wealth of international experience in gas?
But you know what? But you know what? There'd be enough people that would actually say, "Yeah, cool. I'll elect you." It's like Australia, right? Let's go back to Monica Lewinsky. Let's be honest about this. Let's go back to Monica Lewinsky. Is there anybody in Australia that didn't look at Bill Clinton and go, "Yeah, you should have done that, but yeah, good on you, bro." Right? We had John Howard as our Prime Minister. Could you imagine if John Howard was getting? I won't repeat.
Right, so now that we're already off the rails here, can I say that you know, because we are way off the rails, Hunter Biden is actually my favorite whistleblower. You look at the Boeing whistleblowers, right? Suicide from 2 shots in the back of the head. You look at other whistleblowers; they get IRS audits and all that kind of thing. Hunter Biden is the best whistleblower and is having a great time doing it. He blows the whistle on, he leaves a laptop full of high crimes and misdemeanors for everyone to see, and then still has a bag of cocaine in the White House, allegedly, that, somehow they can't find, the camera footage or whatever else. He whistleblows better than anyone else.
Talk about daddy issues.
And he does not get the Boeing whistleblower treatment.
I love you, Paul.
Paul, what you're reinforcing that is my previous point, that if you want to get ahead in business, forget about Liberals, forget about centre-right parties, forget about all of that. Join the left, because that's where you get the preferential treatment.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Guys, we do need to start wrapping this up. I want to take a round of questions. So if you're on Rumble, please send them through. I've seen your comments coming through. They've mostly been compliments of the panel members, which is really good.
Really?
Yeah, one guy said Damo is spot on.
Damo needs to drink less scotch.
No, you're doing great. I mean, you've got a few admirers, and some people think Paul's excellent as well.
I've got a few admirers. How many haters do I have now? None. I've been on long enough for people to go, that guy's a clown.
You've only
he
got
wants
one.
to go to the World Economic Forum. We've had enough of him now.
There was one guy that said that. Actually. I'm not
lover, you.
Literally. He said he's literally WEF. They called you a WEF.
He just wants to go skiing.
And the worst thing is, I was... On my last trip to Switzerland,
I listened to him. My last trip to Switzerland.
No, because that's where my business is, right?
Sorry, mate. I'm only kidding.
So I'm near the border of Switzerland, Liechtenstein. I went to the DFO, and we're driving along, and there's a sign there for going to Davos. And I'm just sitting there in the car going, oh
no.
For all the things that I've said about them. And can we be honest here? That Klaus Schwab, he just looks creepy.
Oh, mate,
it's
a classic Bond villain.
It is totally. It's like, I actually have a theory.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I have a theory that it's the Matrix. Someone's actually up there in my weirder moments.
Right.
Taking the
it's
piss,
like
right?
someone's taking the piss.
Yeah.
It's like, let's call it the Great Reset when everybody's paranoid about it.
So what you've got to do, just for entertainment value, is actually look him up, and look up his incredible credentials, right? Because he's been given honorary degrees from like 100 different, like essentially Ivy League universities around the world. He's just got degree after degree after degree. And you look at this and you're like,
so it's kind of like the Borat general, the Borat guy who has all the medals of honor from all these things.
It's the Great Gatsby. I mean, the Great Gatsby basically, is a story about a guy who had parties.
Yeah.
And all Klaus Schwab did was start the biggest party in the world and invite it. And as soon as it catches on...
And it did catch on. Did you ever see this book?
Yeah.
Reset Australia, Restoring Australia After the Pandemic. Astonishing.
It's 1,500 of the world's biggest corporates and leaders and 1,500 of the world's biggest government leaders. If that's the party, you want to be invited, right? Yeah. And all Klaus Schwab was a bloke who started the party.
Maybe I made a mistake by turning them down. Now my WEF responder here, calling me a WEFie, is gonna lose his mind.
He's probably onto the it'll be connected to the what's the secret societies and all of that are apparently behind it.
But I'll say this because I don't know enough. I don't know the entire history. What I have seen is a lot of organisations that start up originally with actually quite a reasonable kind of, mandate or a reasonable thing that they're trying to promote, and they get taken over. And that was the point that I was trying to make before. Climate change is a really good example of this. If you go to some of the climate change stuff, which I attend quite frequently, and I
you have a private plane when you go?
I don't. I'm one of the very few people that fly commercially.
Very few.
I was actually offered to be on a private jet.
Sure you were.
And I was going to join it. There was 2 reasons why I didn't take the private jet. One was because you can't travel in and out of the United States on the visa waiver program if you're on a private jet, a non-commercial airline. You need to apply for a visa, and it just would have taken too long. The second reason was because the flight that I was going to take had other people on it, and because of a slight delay, they were going to send me a Gulfstream to take me and me alone. And I said, look, I'll just jump on a commercial flight, right?
That makes you different than all the other WEF people that are in the climate.
Well, this wasn't a WEF thing. This was a climate change.
Yeah, right. But same, they all arrive
here's
on
the
their
thing,
private
I actually
jets,
asked
they say
why they
you should eat the
wanted
bugs.
me there in the first place. What's the point of me being there? And they said, because whatever we're missing with right-wing people, maybe you can be a bridge. So I'm only going to be a bridge if it makes sense. The bridge is, it has to make sense economically and environmentally, okay? If you're going to export our emissions to another country and it doesn't save any emissions, then that doesn't make sense. So I have been to a lot of these meetings, and a lot of the founders of these sorts of groups genuinely care. But what ends up happening is that those groups get taken over. And case in point is Greenpeace. You've got the founder of a Greenpeace who's not only left the organisation that he founded, he's actively out there telling people that Greenpeace has become this political joke of an organisation that no longer has anything to do with what they started with. And I want to look at the camera. Sue me. I'm looking forward to it. The Sierra Club in California. What are you doing? Stick to the environment. Why do you want to go on an anti-Trump, anti-abortion, anti-this and that tirade? Stick to your core thing, which is the environment. Stay in your lane. This is the problem that we're seeing with
the Australian Greens. They're the watermelon party.
Absolutely.
So COP29 is going on right now in Azerbaijan, in the city of Baku. And they have been banging on about meat and dairy. Sorry, and that being the cause of 20% of our greenhouse gases.
How far?
And they literally have their lunches and their breakouts, and it's just steaks and meat and hamburgers. There was a guy talking about it tonight on television.
Was it halal for the Taliban people?
Probably. Yes. Oh, I know. Can you believe that? The Taliban have been invited to COP29.
How long do you reckon it's going to be until the feminists jump up? I've been surprised it's taken them so long.
Feminists?
Because the reports are that male human beings fart more than females. Now, I reckon
this is an International Men's Day moment.
I reckon that females are just doing some silent attacks. But how long do you reckon it's going to be until people like Senator O'Neill and Senator Gallagher jump up and go, right, we've got to decrease the population of males because if the cows are farting too much and that's affecting the atmosphere, males are farting too much.
Nice. Do you know International Men's Day is also International Toilet Day? Do you know that? That's actually a fact.
Yeah.
Somebody at the UN, obviously a woman, having a bit of a mistake there on the decision.
I reckon Albo will sort of cozy up to the Taliban while he's there for one reason and one reason alone. He's going to go to them and say, hey, Senator Payman, can you just give me it shows she's still a citizen of your country so I can get her to step down as a senator, because you're not allowed to be a citizen of more than one country, Australia. Otherwise you've got to step down as a senator.
Yeah, but that
she's
means
tried to renounce it, but the Taliban, obviously it's a shambles, the administration, so she hasn't
been able to. That
means
that theoretically, my understanding of the laws, theoretically, me being born here in Australia, I can't run in Australia, but I theoretically could be the Prime Minister of the UK without renouncing my Australian citizenship.
You have to renounce it.
And I'm not sure if
it's not right, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
There's too many people working internationally having, there's too many dual citizens now. It's not like the old days where it's like, oh, there could be a spy, we better not have a dual citizen. Yeah. I think you can sort it out pretty quickly. Like, what is your dual citizenship? I got a friend who's a dual citizen of Lebanon in Australia, and he wanted to run for the federal parliament. And he couldn't run in the last election because he couldn't renounce his Lebanese citizenship because there's no functional Lebanese government. There's actually no organisation you can go to and say, I want to renounce this. They can't do it.
Yep.
I do have to give some credit to the Biden administration. I'm going to defend another group that I don't agree with, but I do have to give some credit to the Biden administration. My last trip to the United States, because I was a little concerned about some of the things that I've said on podcasts and things online, and I noticed that right-wing people like Theresa May declined. What's that girl's name from Canada who now identifies as a man? She's gorgeous, a blonde girl.
Oh, there's a few.
She now identifies as a man. That's a shame.
She did it. She did it as a joke to show.
Oh, Lauren Southern.
Lauren Southern,
Yeah,
right?
Sorry, yeah.
So I believe that she was denied entry to the UK. New Zealand declined entry to people from Australia that were anti-vaxxers and things like that. So I'm coming to the United States. I'm thinking, oh no, I've been there so many times, not going to let me in. And then you actually had to apply for an ESTA. Now, I've got family in Canada, so I normally don't fly to the US. I normally just cross the border, the northern border, right? And I found out you had to get an ESTA. And one of the things that they asked me was for all my social media and online profiles.
Really? Wow.
And I thought, oh no, I'm gone. I'm done. And you know what? Not only was that approved very quickly, I have to say that they were very, very polite to me at the border. They were very, very friendly, as they always have been.
The US.
Yep. Yeah, there was no change at all. Everything was magnificent, and had a great trip over there.
Just because if you were important enough, like Tulsi Gabbard, then you'd have
some problems.
Then you have some problems. Yeah. The idea that she was put under a watch list is insane.
Just give Kevin Rudd a call, mate. You'll be fine.
I spend so much time in California because that's where a lot of my family live in California, and there's a lot of people over there. I won't say the majority because clearly it's not, but there's a lot of people there, and specifically I spent a lot of time in San Francisco. They are totally against a lot of this woke nonsense. And I've got people that I'm quite close to that are gay. They sit there and go, they talk to me about it because they can't say it in front of their friends and family in California. They go, we don't understand this woke stuff. What the hell? We don't get it. I'm sick and tired of this. So I think there is a real change that we can't see. And it's very hard to see unless you're there.
It's coming.
Even amongst the people that you would expect not to be on that side.
Guys, a few questions in the chat. Let's quickly just ram through some of them. One person said, Joel, when will you provide the how to vote cards for the federal election? This is from Kathy. They helped us so much. Pleasure to do it. It'll be 3 weeks before the election. So election could be done early. I suspect a March election is still on the books. Labor may try to call it early because the Liberals haven't pre-selected a lot of their candidates in New South Wales still.
Usual.
And they'll be caught with their pants down, and you need New South Wales to form government, so they might go early in New South Wales. And so, look, it could be 3 weeks before that in March, or at the latest it'll be in May when the election's most likely going to be. We've got a lot of compliments, people saying, great panel, enjoy got a lot of value out of the conversation. That's really good. One person said, no one uses their names, and I understand why, but it's just weird reading out one big camel. This is the name of the person. Such a good conversation, so much information and intelligent opinions. Thanks, guys. Smiley face. One person said, this is Dane86. I'd love to hear your thoughts about RFK, specifically on how he's going to tackle Big Pharma and these mass corporations causing a wide spectrum of health problems, particularly in kids. Look, I'd love to go into it. We don't have a lot of time, but look, if you listen to what he said on this specific topic, he wants to go after everything. I mean, he wants to fire pretty much thousands of these employees in these different departments, and I'm here for it. I love all the memes online about him going after fat people, and also the photos of him having that Macca's burger. That was really...
He's got to get past the Senate, though. The Senate is still kind of run by the deep state, and hopefully, as long as he gets confirmed, I think he can make a huge difference. But the Senate doesn't have the populist revolution that the executive branch is.
And his first port is to ban all the foods that Donald Trump likes. I think.
Right.
The first thing. I just want to, if I could very quickly say something about this. Look, I'm overweight. Clearly, I'm not sure if that shows on the camera or not. I'm overweight. I weigh 115 kilos now.
Is that it?
Well, I was down to 102. I put a bit back on. I'm 6'1". I weigh 105, and it's not muscle. I need to lose weight.
Yeah.
I've got a few choices. I can use medications, or I can cut sugar. Last time I cut sugar, I lost 25 kilos in about 7 weeks.
Oh, right.
Right, by cutting sugar, doing low carb and keto. Right, there is no medication for that. So the pharmaceutical companies. And look, why I'm overweight? It's not because of environment. It's because of my own bad decisions. Because I drink too much, I eat too much, and I've been a lunatic throughout my life, and it's my responsibility.
But there are a lot of things that have hidden harms, like seed oils, vegetable oils. These things are terrible for you. And a lot of these things that have harms have been covered up. You know, the
high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, high fructose corn, absolutely. And so, you know, it's not that RFK is going to ban foods, but actually create investigations and studies that will actually tell us just how badly we have been misled. Like the food pyramid. The only thing that's true about the food pyramid is that you become the shape that they're advertising. That is the only thing that is actually true about
what they need to do, though, as well as dealing with food and actually telling people what's in their food, is can we stop bullshitting each other, right? If I show you guys photos of me when I was, 20 and I was a bit more built and, 40 kilos lighter, without blowing my own trumpet, I was a reasonably good-looking person. Now, I don't think I'm ugly today, but the reality is that I'm not as good-looking as I otherwise would be because I'm overweight. And why I'm overweight? Because I made a bit of money and I bought a pub when I was 22 and I drank sugary drinks and cocktails and had a life which was totally out of control. And I bloody enjoyed it. That's why I'm fat. This is the result of the fun that I had in my irresponsibility when I was in my 20s. So don't sit there and tell me, the fat acceptance movement's absolutely not. So I think that what RFK is going to do is going to be fantastic.
Yeah. I appreciate the personal responsibility story, and that's beautiful. But the number of things that they have covered up, for the DNA contamination in the shots, for instance, this is unbelievable what they have done and what they've covered up. It's one of those things where
there goes YouTube.
Oh, should I stop talking about this?
No, go ahead.
You haven't violated yet.
Okay. Well, the point is, even the Surgeon General of Florida has actually pointed this out. But the thing is, no one's covering it. And the CDC and the FDA are covering for Pfizer and Moderna. On the DNA contamination is bad. If you put it inside of a lipid nanoparticle, which is what they did in the shots, then it gets into the cells. And part of that contamination is the SV40 promoter. This is a problem that once this gets more airtime, once the CDC and the FDA are not covering for Big Pharma, this is going to be a recognized disaster.
Let's come back to the food pyramid for a moment.
I kind of like the DNA contamination.
Okay. But let's go to the food pyramid for a moment. So parents in America say, we want our children to eat more fresh fruit, vegetables. So let's put fresh fruit into their school lunches. So what do?
Fruit roll-ups.
Exactly. And those little things you get, they're sort of like white at the bottom and they have like, if it's strawberry, there's like a red thing. If it's pineapple, it's like a yellow thing. They're like sort of round yellow. I'll buy a bag, I'll bring them in here. So what they did was they put things like that and the fruit roll-ups into the school lunches. And
they call it fruit.
They call it fruit. And so the government said, that's not fruit. And they said, well, define fruit. The government can't even define a woman, so how are they going to define fruit? They couldn't do it. So they tried to do it by it has to have a certain amount of...
It identifies as fruit.
Exactly. So they had to have a certain amount of fruit juice and fruit pulp and this and that, right? So now the kids are eating what we would consider to be lollies and candy, and that's being, touted as being fruit. And the NAACP then jumps up and says, well, if you're talking about introducing a sugar tax and all that sort of stuff, that's racist, right? Just so happens that they got a $10 million donation from what's been reported by the sugar lobby. And when I bring that up when I'm in the US to black friends of mine, they sit there and they go, well, I'm horrified. That's terrible. And then I see them, months later or a year later say, hey, did you bring that up last time you went to an NAACP meeting? Oh, well, no. Well, why not? This is the sort of corruption that you see. What I have been most amused by the New York Times fact-checking on RFK in the last couple of days, when he was talking about Fruit Loops.
Oh, I saw this.
And the ingredients in the United States versus the ingredients in Europe.
Yep.
They fact-checked him, which actually proved his point.
Absolutely, yep.
And Liberals in California lost their mind over this, saying RFK is out of control, etc., whilst California themselves are now cracking down on that very same practice, and it's the Liberals in California that are saying that sugar shouldn't be in the food groups. Hence the reason why I keep saying that people on the left who think they're on the left, probably you need to become a Republican, because actually your party, the Democrats, have given up on you and they don't care about you at all.
The sugar lobby needs to be quiet too, because if he gets high fructose corn syrup out of things, the corn lobby will be upset because that's the cheap sugar that they produce. The sugar lobby will benefit. The cane sugar lobby will actually benefit because that'll have to be used instead. Even Coca-Cola, he's talking about putting pressure on Coca-Cola to take out the high fructose stuff because that's so bad and replace it with actual cane sugar.
And bring the tallow back into French fries as opposed to the toxic crap that they're currently fried in.
And it tastes better.
Yes. Yep. And it's much better for you.
Some last comments to close off the show. We've gone quite a bit over for this show, guys. But I hope
Rogan episode. Right?
Yeah, but it is almost 3 hours.
Did you say it was a 7-hour?
No,
a 7-hour show. That's
9 hour. No,
that's what Damien told me. You said.
I have to give a shout out to this this person, Smiley B123. I love this person. I can just tell it's a lovely older lady. She's been telling people to like and subscribe to the channel, and she's been complimenting everyone on the panel. And
darling.
You can just tell. I can't see a young...
Including me, because so far I'm the only person that's had any criticism. Leave me alone. I've got a fragile ego.
Nothing but compliments. It's been very good. But no, look, everyone else, no major. Another person, one person's called Swifty. Good panel tonight. Joel, thanks for trying to wake up more smooth brains. Another person, I can't wait to see the ripple effect of draining the Big Pharma swamp. It's getting spray in the air and drink water. Yep. Recess appointments are the way to go. Eat oil tune. It will lose weight but get more high protein. I think tuna, they meant to say. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, like and subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed this particular live stream. I will be doing another one on Monday. There's actually a crypto convention happening this week in Sydney at, I do believe, the Sydney Opera House. The crypto convention, if you search Crypto Convention Sydney, you'll see the website actually come up. You can actually get a 20% discount if you use our code JJ20, very easy to remember. But I don't know how people are going to get there because apparently the unions are striking and the trains will be down from Thursday till Sunday, which is nuts. But on Monday, I will be having a company...
Fly our private jets in.
That should private. But no, on Monday...
Our meat fest.
A meat fest. On Monday, I'll be having a podcast with Stormrake, they manage portfolio funds for people that want to put money into crypto, but they don't want to be the ones investing it. These guys invest it for you. They do really good work, and they're actually going to become a sponsor for the show, which is really good for us. And so maybe I've got to introduce them to yourself, Damien, as well as maybe another gold company. But no, look, I'm doing these things so that you guys can get your money sorted. You know, the market's looking really, really good with crypto right now, and whether it's good or bad, there's different advice. These guys can help you meander through a very difficult topic, crypto. But I really appreciate this. This is probably going to be one of the last shows for the year, but I do have Rami. He's going overseas after Monday, so Monday will probably be the last one Rami does for the year. I'm looking forward to doing many more conversations in the weeks to come, in the months and years to come. But I want to thank everyone for listening. If you've enjoyed Damien, if you've enjoyed Paul, if you want to get more of them, I've put the links to their Twitter for Damien and Facebook for Paul in the description, so you can actually go and follow them more. Shakeel, we are going to get his...
Look me up. Leave me alone.
No, don't look Shakeel up. I'm going to try and hook him up with some socials next year. But I will see you guys later. Did you guys want to say anything before I close off the show?
No, just see you Friday night. OthersideTV.com.au, OthersideTV.com.au, and Sky News Media Show on Friday. I'll be on as well.
Thank you very much. The narrative is breaking. There will be good times ahead.
Absolutely.
My first show on here, my second show on here was with Stephen Pedeth, who lives up in Queensland. I think he'd be a great addition to your podcast, so I'll try and hook his place up. But to the people, look, I would just say I do think that we should really get out there, set up some organisations to try to counter organisations like the WEF, like I've said before. And second, and I don't care how much government hates me, can you stop trusting government? They're not on your side. Okay, take your finances, take your life, take your education, your children's future into your own hands, and stop trusting government and stop trusting big corporations, because I promise you they're not on your side. I've been all over the world. I've been involved in chambers of commerce. I've met with politicians, and they're nice people behind closed doors, but they're not on your side.
Yeah,
absolutely. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. God bless you. If you want to support the show, click the link in my bio, click the link in my description, click donate on PayPal, become a regular supporter. And if you want to buy one of those maps, the electoral maps, I call them the MAGA referendum map for Australia, email me at joel@thearkpodcast.com. I've actually had 2 people email me while I've been sitting here. Those maps are the future. They will show you exactly where it's worth you spending your time in elections. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. God bless you. I enjoy this. I enjoy chatting with you guys, and thank you for the comments and the questions. See you later.